Chapter 621-Contact the Navy. Suddenly, Robin turned around abruptly, threw himself into Li Ang's arms again, hugged him tightly, his beautiful eyes were red, and he gritted his silver teeth to resist the urge to stay in his heart. Well, it's not that there is no chance to meet. Li Ang patted Robin's pink back and said softly, "I'm leaving." Robin glanced at Li Ang affectionately. This time, she left without hesitation. All of a sudden, she rushed onto the boat, not daring to look back at Li Ang's figure. Because she was afraid, she couldn't help it, and wanted to stay by Li Ang's side forever. Whoa! One after another, warships moved gradually, pulling away the seawater on both sides. The calm sea was rippling with ripples, and the waves rolled continuously. On the deck, Betty glanced at Robin, who had locked herself in the room. With her seductive and delicate face, she couldn't help but glanced at Li Ang on the shore, her beautiful eyes flashing with a strange brilliance. This man. Actually, it can turn Robin fans around. This is really too strange. Robin, this little girl, seems to be too affectionate. However, even I was a little moved. After all, this man, he is Li Ang. At this time, Li Ang's eyes were also fixed on Betty's beautiful eyes. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, showing a friendly smile, and nodded. 220. Being watched by Li Ang's eyes made Betty's face a tinge of blush, and she calmed down a little before she recovered. What's the matter? Betty covered her face, puzzled. Is she actually moved? Location on the shore. Li Ang gradually retracted his gaze, looked at the warship that gradually left his realization range, fixed his gaze on Hancock beside him, and gently hugged Hancock's soft body. Let's go. Hancock leaned against Li Ang's ear and said in that crisp voice. Okay, then, we have to contact the real Navy. The cheap ones will be taken by the people of the Revolutionary Army. Let the Navy take care of the trouble. We're just doing it too much. Li Ang released his hand and held his slender hand. The soft touch made the corner of his mouth curved. Fingers crossed. He pulled Hancock and left the position on the coast step by step. Just ordinary little things. Hancock's pretty face showed a smile and said slowly. She doesn't care about these ordinary weapons and children's problems. Ordinary ammunition, if Barry is enough, you can have as much as you want. As for Barry's question, she never bothered. If she has a population, she can rule a kingdom, and naturally there will be no shortage of population. However, in the final analysis, I also gave the Navy a huge benefit. This benefit is much better than these ordinary arms and population. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered to himself. I don't know, how far has the genius scientist Vegapunk researched? This idea of his can directly improve the military strength of the Navy headquarters by several grades. Today, the Revolutionary Army takes a little advantage of arms. Chapter 621-Contact the Navy. NLT, 39 and GT. Today, the Revolutionary Army takes a little advantage of arms. The real advantage is all on the Navy's side. However, for these things, he will not be too concerned about it. Anyway, he won't get involved in the matter of war. If he really wants to participate in the war, then he alone can lead the outcome of a war. Whoever he wants to win can win. Such a war would be too boring. Soon after Li Ang took Hancock across the street, he returned to the abandoned floor. Tautu and Tina still seemed to be standing here very leisurely. A group of children with families formed a group, and they recovered a little bit of anger. They were able to talk occasionally, not as dead as before. Children should have such a vibrant youthful vigor. Are you gone? Tautume looked at Li Ang and asked. Yes. Li Ang nodded, glanced at the 2,000 or so children not far from his eyes, and smiled with a bit of interest. Next, you have to let your Navy handle these troublesome things. What's this? Tautu was calm and said with a smile, the Navy around here can't even notice so many things happening here. It's time for them to use their bodies to deal with these tedious things. Otherwise, wouldn't they take the wages from the Navy headquarters for nothing? Since they have taken the Navy headquarters money, they naturally have to do things for the Navy. Also, I don't blame them for not doing things well, it's good enough. It's a pretty light punishment for them to take these kids back to their homes. Tautu smiled and explained slowly. It can be understood that way. If the nearby Navy were a little smarter, it wouldn't have been so long, and they wouldn't have noticed anything unusual on this island. So, really want to hold things accountable. The Navy in the nearby waters cannot shirk these responsibilities. Not only because of the power problem here, but also because there are already weapons factories here, these navies can't find it. This is the greatest sin. Even the weapons factory can't detect it. Once the consequences occur, who will bear it? Then inform the Navy around here. This group of children is very difficult to deal with here. Li Ang said with a smile. Immediately, Tina took out the phone bug, contacted the naval headquarters, and directly asked the naval headquarters to issue an order to the nearby naval branch. It has been dealt with. Tina's pink lips parted slightly and smiled. Soon, these navies will come to clean up the mess in front of you. As for how long you will be busy, it is unknown. However, isn't that how they will make up for their mistakes? Tautu also smiled and said. Let's just wait here for a while, the nearby navy wants to come. It will also take a few hours. Tina thought for a while and said. It doesn't matter. Li Ang nodded, looked at the group of children not far away, and said, after dealing with these things, we can retire. Tina, your task has also been completed, and there is no burden on your body. Yeah. Tina's beautiful eyes flickered and she nodded. This line takes less time than expected. However, this is also because of the company of Li Ang, so there is such a high efficiency. Without Li Ang to accompany him, it would not be so easy to rely on her alone to finish the matter here. Moreover, it is impossible to cooperate with the Revolutionary Army. Undeniable. One of the key reasons why the efficiency here is so high is also some information and help provided by the Revolutionary Army. Chapter 622-come. The whole island. With the departure of the Revolutionary Army, all residents finally breathed a sigh of relief. It's finally over. These navies didn't blame us. This is the best ending. In the future, we can't be deceived so easily. That's right, the damned imposter, what he did, actually made us bear the consequences. Fortunately, the Navy didn't want to blame us, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. No, this imposter is so hateful. If he died, and he wanted to pull us back. Quote. A group of residents were talking angrily. Fortunately, after the Navy left, their original tension gradually dissipated. People come and go in the streets, and everything seems to have returned to the way it was before. All the arms were directly transported away. It gave them a sigh of relief. Without the existence of arms, it is still difficult for the Navy to catch their handle. Moreover, the Navy will not rashly attack them. Everything got the satisfactory results they wanted. Boom, boom, boom. A crisp and pleasant voice came out. The concert hall, which was originally destroyed, was gradually rebuilt. In the past, the basement was filled directly by them, and there was no need for the existence of those so-called basements. Although, musically, they got a huge damage. However, this does not mean that they will give up. The dream of being able to communicate with the Sea Kings still exists in everyone's head and can never be erased. Chasing for the dream, this is what all the residents of their entire island want to do. In particular, children in every household have also been exposed to the piano. In order to learn from the legendary Lord Li Ang, I will continue to work hard. It can be seen from this. The storm caused by Li Ang is really not small. To be able to make so many people study hard, this is an upsurge. A big boom sweeping the whole world and the whole sea. A few minutes later, a group of inhabitants in the area on the shore, casting nets and fishing. Some take boats and sail in the surrounding waters to catch seafood. Since the fakes died and we went to sea, there weren't so many restrictions. No, it turns out that he didn't let us go to sea because he was afraid that after we went to sea, we would find out his identity as a fake. This guy's plans are really too meticulous. But fortunately, in the end, he was finally seen through. Speaking of which, is the real Lord Liang really still on our island? Why haven't we been able to find traces of his existence? Quote. A group of people are talking. Suddenly, a huge warship appeared in front, constantly sailing. This frightened them a lot. Navy, why go and come back? What's the situation? Why are these navies here again? Didn't we just send them away just now? Come back now, do you want to settle accounts after the autumn? My God, go and inform the others. Quote. A group of residents panicked and ran away. Suddenly, the entire island was shrouded in a shadow. Everyone already knows that the Navy goes and returns. The warships, although not many in number, really gave each of them a heavy pressure. Just sent off the Navy, why did you come back? Chapter 622-come. Just sent off the Navy, why did you come back? Could it be that you want to settle accounts with them? This thought appeared in their hearts, making them even more nervous and fearful. No, we did nothing wrong, we are all working hard to help them transport arms. No, you see, these warships are completely different from the previous ones. Yes, the size of the ships is different. Also, the numbers are different. There were 5 warships before, but now there are only 4. Are they from different naval branches? Quote. Residents started talking. But what was hard to hide was their flustered faces. The Navy actually came back, what exactly is this for? Although they were not the same group, they welcomed a group of navies, which gradually lifted their relaxed mood. Tension spontaneously arises. This shore was surrounded by their personnel. Surrounded here, they were all surrounded by water, welcoming the arrival of this group of navy, with a grim, serious, and uneasy expression. In their sight, the warship is constantly zooming in and getting closer to the coast. Flowers. On the deck of a warship, a group of navy dressed in navy uniforms stood in the direction of the bow. A middle-aged man in the uniform of a navy colonel looked at the group of residents gathered in front of him, frowning. Colonel, they are all concentrated here, we can't log in at all. A navy soldier's expression changed and he said in a low voice. Let them go. The middle-aged man raised his brows and said directly, what are they doing here? Are we welcome? But there are too many people here. Furthermore, the order I received was to cooperate with Colonel Tina here to deal with the matter. So, Colonel Tina, where is it? I didn't see it. His eyes kept wandering through the crowd, and he still couldn't find a single person in a navy uniform. 00. This made him feel a little suspicious. At the same time, he felt a little nervous in his heart. After all, he is also responsible for such a big thing happening here. If the person above is to blame, he will not be able to run away. Therefore, facing that Colonel Tina, he was also very uneasy. I hope that the other party will not blame him for these negligent sins. Otherwise, even he would not be able to eat and walk around. In a blink of an eye, the warship has approached its position on the coast. Go away, let's go ashore. A navy soldier looked at the crowd in front and shouted loudly. Immediately, all the residents retreated a few steps, their eyes still a little nervous. Go ashore. With heavy pressure in his heart, the middle-aged colonel stepped down and led a group of navies behind him to log in directly ashore. They also appeared in the eyes of this group of residents. The atmosphere has become very eerie. A group of residents actually surrounded themselves. This made the middle-aged colonel feel very puzzled. He frowned and asked, why are you all concentrated here? In the crowd, a strong man stepped out. His throat was dry and he whispered, Lord Navy, why are you here? Everyone looked at the Navy silently, waiting for the other party's answer. Is it to take them down? Thinking of this, a group of residents became even more nervous and apprehensive. NLT, 42 and GT. Chapter 623-finishing. The middle-aged colonel wanted to answer when the phone worm beside him rang. Boo boo. The distinctive voice of the phone bug lingered around. He picked up the phone bug and heard a clear and melodious female voice. Colonel Nick. It's me. Excuse me, are you Colonel Tina? Nick's voice became tense and he asked tentatively. It's me. Now, lead your staff to the location I designated. Here, there are a group of children who need you to escort them home. Soon. After getting the amount of information from Tina, Nick directly pushed aside the crowd and said, "Come with me." Yes, Colonel. A group of Navy suddenly disappeared. This made a group of residents look at each other with a puzzled look on their faces. Didn't you come to find them? What is that for, July 20 inches? Could it be that something is missing? A resident said weakly. Immediately, everyone agreed. Step by step, they followed behind the Navy, trying to figure out the true intentions of the other party. Let's go and see, don't we know what their purpose is? A strong man showed a bit of nervousness and suggested. A group of residents, following behind the Navy, also left their position on the coast. In an abandoned floor. Tina slowly put down the phone bug, her face was calm, and she said with a smile, "They are here." So soon. Li Ang said with a hint of surprise. After all, they also have responsibilities. If I don't speed up the task, then if I upload this information, they can't eat and leave. Tautufan opened her lips slightly and explained. That's right, in this case, they naturally have to do it more seriously. The changes in this island can also be regarded as their dereliction of duty. In the face of their own dereliction of duty, if they don't work hard, that's the real trouble. If you think about it, they will definitely be respectful when they wait. Li Ang nodded and said. The sound of footsteps came, very obvious, without any rocks. Come on. Li Ang looked in the direction of the gate and said. With such footsteps, you don't need to think at all, you know that the group of Navy has arrived at the designated position according to Tina's instructions. As expected. In Li Ang's line of sight, he saw a group of Navy in white clothes, with a somewhat anxious look, and quickly felt this place. Colonel Nick. Tina's footsteps moved, and she stood forward, expressionless, with a bit of majesty, said. The colonel of the headquarters has a completely different status from the colonel of the branch who was dispatched to guard it. For example, the position of the lieutenant general of the headquarters and the lieutenant general of the branch is self-evident. Is it me, are you, Colonel Tina? Nick came quickly and asked very respectfully. Well, since you are all here, then the problems of these children will be handed over to you. Tina nodded, pointed to more than 2,000 children not far away, and instructed. Colonel Tina, please rest assured that these children will be returned to their respective families intact. If it cannot be done, I will admit that I will be punished. Nick took a deep breath and said solemnly. Okay, then I'm going to return to Marin Vatican. I'll leave these tedious things to you. My mission is over here. Chapter 623-ending. NLT, 43 and GT. Okay, then I'm going to return to Marin Vatican. I'll leave these tedious things to you. My mission is over here. Tina showed a smile, turned around, looked in Li Ang's direction, took a pair of long straight and slender legs, and walked to Li Ang's side. These last things are left to the Navy to handle, and it is difficult for Tina to relax a little. Immediately. Nick looked at the people around Tina in surprise. His throat was dry, his lips were trembling, and his eyes couldn't hide a deep sense of fear. Things are over. Therefore, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina did not carry masks anymore. Their astonishingly delicate faces are also in everyone's sight. Especially Hancock, his every move has a natural charm, and the rate of return is as high as 100%. However, Nick's gaze was not on the faces of Hancock and the others, but on the only man among the four. You are. Nick swallowed his saliva, looked at Li Ang, and said in a trembling voice, Li Ang. Silence. The group of Navy behind him also had their lips trembling, and their eyes became a little terrified. The name Li Ang is really like thunder. Basically, anyone who has sailed the sea for a while will know the name. It can be called the existence of monsters with the world's top combat power. Li Ang. Is this really Li Ang? I didn't expect to see him in person. But, why is he here? The Navy whispered, and their tone was full of horrified mood swings. Seeing the existence of Li Ang, how could they be calm? Let's go, it's time to leave. A smile appeared on Li Ang's face and said. Yeah. The three Hancock girls nodded lightly, and their pretty faces showed sweet smiles, which were indescribably beautiful. Under the eyes of Nick and others, Li Ang led the three of Hancock, and a group of four gradually left here and approached the coast. As Li Ang's back gradually disappeared, Nick came back to his senses, with lingering fears. Before he knew it, his legs had weakened. Facing a monster of Li Ang's level, he naturally felt fear and nervousness that could not be concealed. Almost, he was paralyzed to the ground. Send all these children to the warship. Nick took a deep breath and commanded. Yes, Colonel. A group of Navy nodded quickly. They showed gentle smiles, faced the children, and used a friendly way of communication to let these children leave here with them. This group of children was also obedient, and without much words, they followed the Navy and left gradually. I didn't expect such a thing to happen within my jurisdiction. 4.4 Nick was still afraid. When he saw these children, his spine was wet with cold sweat. If Colonel Tina reports to the above, then his official position will not be guaranteed. Fortunately, Colonel Tina just now had no intention of reporting it. This made him heave a sigh of relief, and he threw himself into the task that Tina gave them this time. This time, we must be very energetic, and we must not make any mistakes. This is an opportunity for him to make up for what he has done. If there is still a mistake, then he can only admit it. Go with Uncle Navy and we'll take you home. Miss your mom and dad. Don't worry, we'll definitely take you back to see them. The Navy was very friendly and comforted a group of children. Seeing these children who have been abused, their hearts are also very uncomfortable. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 624-Wandering. A group of residents just watched a group of Navy carry these children away. Their eyes widened and their faces were full of disbelief. Didn't you take it away? What? There are another group of children here. What is the situation? How can there be so many children on their island? What's the matter? Where did these children come from? Why don't I know? Yeah, and, looking at the battle, my God, 2,000 children. What a huge group of human traffickers this number must be. Is it already so chaotic on our island? It's making people panic now. Quote. A group of residents had dry throats, unable to calm down as they watched the Navy leave with their children. After all, the small island in their impression is still stuck in the previous cognition. How prosperous and peaceful their island was before the arrival of the imposter. But since the counterfeiters came, they have done so many things that they have never discovered. If it wasn't for these navies to find out, how long would they be kept secret? Hopefully, these navies don't blame us. 123 resident sighed. This island, even a native resident like him, is becoming more and more invisible. Sure. Li Ang brought 3 Hancocks, a group of 4, and successfully landed on a warship. So, go back to Marianfan now. With a smile, Li Ang looked at the 3 girls in front of him and asked with a smile. I just told the Navy headquarters through the phone bug just now, indicating that the task on my side has been completed. Therefore, it is not important to return to the Navy headquarters for the time being. Tina's pink lips moved slightly and said slowly. What do you mean? Li Ang directly hugged Tina's delicate body and asked, "Why don't you take advantage of this time to sail on the sea for a while?" Tina's beautiful eyes flashed and she suggested, "Do you agree with this proposal?" Li Ang looked at Hancock and Tautu and said, "Of course I agree." Hancock and Peach Rabbit looked at each other, their beautiful eyes flickered, and they nodded quickly. Bored in the same place, they will naturally feel very boring. However, if you can play in various places on the sea, it is very delicious. Plus, it's just perfect to be accompanied by their beloved. So, where are we going? We've got to want a spot. If we sail haphazardly, we'll probably lose our way. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and said, he would not refuse such a proposal to play on the sea. Since it is rare to go out to sea once, no matter what, you have to have a good time. If they return to Marin Fando, Tautu and Tina's work will gradually be on the right track. So, while you have time, it is better to play more. Just sailing aimlessly, it feels so exciting. Hancock's delicate face showed a bit of excitement and said, after going to sea for so long, she has never tried to sail on the sea aimlessly. Let's just move with the wind and take a look. Finally, we will reach the island. The idea is still very good, I like it. Tautu's pretty face also said with a bit of a smile. They are also interested in sailing without a destination. If you all agree, then it will be easy. The corners of Li Ang's mouth curled slightly, his hands restlessly squeezed Tina's soft balls, and with a smile, he walked to the position of the rudder. Immediately, Tina's pretty face turned red due to being attracted, and she glared angrily at Li Ang, but did not speak. Since it is a destinationless voyage, then let the rudder of this ship move with the wind. Chapter 624-Wandering. NLT, 45 and GT. Then let the rudder of this ship move with the wind. Li Ang thought so, and directly released the controllability of the rudder. He no longer controls the rudder, and only releases the white sail, which will move with the wind, and the whole ship will go on a purposeless voyage on the sea. The breeze blew in, curling Hancock's jet black hair. The three of them's beautiful eyes flickered, and they felt that the entire warship was gradually leaving the position of the coast. They were very excited and seemed very excited. Going to go. Tautu's beautiful eyes flickered and said. The warship gradually left the shore. And, driven by this breeze, they sailed to the southwest of their entire island. As for the purpose ahead, none of them knew about this. This voyage was purposeless. Therefore, they can only follow the breeze, and they don't know which island they finally reach. However, this time it was finally an exciting journey. Gradually, Li Ang stood on the deck and could no longer see the island. This also means that the entire ship has gradually sailed to the center of the sea, and there are no islands around it, a sea of water that stretches as far as the eye can see. The sea breeze blew with a chill. In the sun, the golden light was shining, and the sea appeared golden, which was very dazzling. You said, will we enter the East China Sea or the North Sea from the Great Waterway? The West China Sea. Tina's pretty face moved, and she asked with a bit of excitement. I really can't tell. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly. In this direction, it is really uncertain whether it will leave the Great Waterway. But since they are all purposeless voyages, there is no need to think about which position to reach. Anyway, at the end, the answer will be revealed. Where does it go back? At this point, even Li Ang felt a little curious. A military 307 ship, carrying 4 people, drifted on the sea with the wind. Alternating day and night. At night, calm. The entire warship stayed on the sea, motionless. And in the room, there was a war going on. A burst of intriguing sound was blocked in the room. One look. The scene in the room is really impressive. A bronze body with white flowers, under the strong attack of Li Ang, kept begging for mercy. This made Li Ang's sense of achievement infinitely increased, and he was dissatisfied with his movements, and he was still attacking rapidly. This made Hancock, Tautu, and Tina all weak, and Meimu couldn't help glaring arrogantly at Liang. The other party has not stopped yet. This is the rhythm that will make them exhausted. Good husband, I admit defeat. I surrender, I surrender. Quote. The three women spoke in succession. Not to mention the three of them, even if there are four of them including Robin, they are not Liang's opponents. What's more, now that there is one less Robin, it is even more impossible for them to compete with Liang. The only option they have is to admit defeat. However, after admitting defeat, Liang still did not give up. He had to make the three beautiful fairies completely lose their fighting ability before they gradually stopped. Chapter 625 _ A Woman's Second Development. The next day. The sun was shining brightly, and the light was shining down, illuminating the whole sea with golden light. The blue sea, the breeze blows. A warship, moving with the wind, sails aimlessly on the sea. On the deck. Liang wore sunglasses and enjoyed the sunbathing very comfortably. The figures of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina gradually walked out of the room and walked around. Their steps were strange and they did not dare to take two big steps. After seeing Liang, the three of them glared at Liang and were very annoyed. This guy has been restless all night. Now, walking is a problem. What's even more disgusting is that he didn't give us a massage and made us suffer so much. It's disgusting. In the future, don't fight with him, let him suffer slowly by himself. Quote. Hancock's beautiful eyes were vicious, and their pretty faces were blushing, and said, after the crazy battle last night, they now have big problems when they walk. Although it is not the first time to experience this kind of thing, and both before and after have been developed. However, under Liang's terrifying offensive, they were still beaten and retreated. Even if they begged for mercy, Liang still did not let them go. It wasn't until they were exhausted and fell asleep directly that they were able to stop. So, early this morning, they felt a soreness from there, and they were in a bad mood, especially seeing Liang's demeanor, which made them grit their silver teeth secretly. Are you up? Liang took off his sunglasses, looked at the three of Hancock, and smiled. It's all your fault. Hancock pounced with his teeth and claws all at once, like a furious tigress, with a vicious appearance, but on her delicate face, it seemed to have a strange aura. Hesitation and pain made her footsteps unsteady, and she almost stumbled to the ground. Let me give you a good massage. Liang hugged Hancock's delicate body and smiled. I didn't massage yesterday. I have to wait until today. What are you doing? Hancock pointed at Liang with a slender finger, and said angrily. Of course, it's more comfortable to take advantage of it today. The corners of Liang's mouth twitched slightly, and he smiled. Then, without waiting for Hancock's struggle, his hands explored directly. Soon, I caught the two soft spots at once, and massaged them for a while. Hancock's face flicked, and half of the sky blushed. He glared angrily at Liang, his whole body was weak, and he leaned in front of Liang. It seems that it has grown again. Liang felt the feeling in his hands, and he couldn't help but look at Hancock's delicate red face and said. The body of the devil is already in shape, but now, it continues to develop, so how can other women live? Why, don't give it. Hancock rolled his eyes, his long eyelashes trembled, with a bit of shyness, said. In fact, she found it too. It seems that his body is still developing. Moreover, the scale of development is quite obvious. When I was wearing clothes, it was very crowded. Now, I almost have to break my clothes. This made her have to think about it. When customizing clothes in the future, she should customize a special one. After all, her figure is completely different from that of ordinary women. If the custom size is larger, she will also fit looser. Because she is very slender, but, in some places, she is very large. Custom-made clothes must be made to measure. Thinking of this, her face turned red for a while, and she felt a strange feeling coming from her body. Chapter 625 _ A Woman's Second Development. NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. NLT, 47 NGT. Thinking of this, her face turned red for a while, and she felt a strange feeling coming from her body. Under Liang's half take advantage, half massage move. In a blink of an eye, Hancock felt that the soreness was not so obvious. This made her jump up immediately. Mei Mei looked at Liang, her pretty face blushed slightly, and said, "I'm fine, let them give you a massage." "All right." Liang looked at his hands still, and even put them on the tip of his nose, took a deep breath, felt the direction, and lingered. Perverted. Hancock's face became more and more blushing. Seeing Liang's actions, she could not wait to find a sew to get in, it was so shameful. Afterwards, she fled, and quickly got into the room. Taotu and Tina also went through Liang's special massage one after another. This made the two of them feel very shy, and their faces turned red. Feeling the touch of Liang's hands, they felt extremely uncomfortable. The head is constantly emitting white smoke. By the way, you are also developing. Liang's eyes flickered, feeling the touch of his hands, he couldn't help but say. It doesn't matter if Hancock is developing, Taotu and Tina are also developing. Could it be that this is the second development brought about by the transformation from a girl to a woman? Although the scale of the two is not as huge as Hancock. However, compared to ordinary people, their scale is simply what ordinary women dream about. Diaresis well. Taotu and Tina blushed and nodded. Their bodies are developing, and they naturally understand. They noticed it at first. But if they investigate the reason, they can only think that it may be that Liang gave them too much moisture, so it directly caused the second development. This development has made their figures even more devilish. The original clothes are already asymmetrical in size. If they must wear them, they will have a hunch that they will really break the clothes. However, it is not because the body is too fat and burst, but somewhere, too fat, will burst the clothes. So, now they try to wear looser clothes. In this way, you can prevent yourself from breaking your clothes. But even what they used to think of as loose clothing, now they feel it when they put it on. The loose clothes of the past, it seems, are just right for a certain part of the body now. Could it be that my nourishment is too strong? Jiaos. Liang thought to himself. Hands still feel the soft touch, intoxicated. Soon, the massage for the two girls was also completed. Taotu and Tina fled, and quickly got into the same house. At the same time, the three of them chatted in the room, and there were bursts of silver bell-like sounds. Liang didn't want to eavesdrop. It's just that the three girls' voices were so loud that she unconsciously listened to them. Did not expect. The three girls were actually in the room, secretly comparing their bodies. Cough cough. Liang coughed dryly, and his blood almost rolled over. It seems that the three girls' body growth has become more and more obvious recently. The whole ship, on the sea, fluttered with the wind. Whoa! The sea water was pushed aside, and the warship sailed unimpeded, with the direction of the breeze, and continued to advance without purpose. Chapter 626 _ Arrival. A few days later. No wind belt. A warship stopped in a windless area. On the deck, Liang looked at the three girls helplessly and said, I didn't expect this to be our final destination. There is no wind, it is no longer possible to sail here. Both sides of the great waterway are blocked by the windless belt. It is normal for us to be blown into the windless belt. However, this is not our final stop. Hancock's beautiful eyes flickered and said slowly. Ending in the windless belt. This is not the answer the three of them want. Then I'll change direction and leave from the windless zone. If we pass through the windless zone, we will probably reach one of the four seas. Liang walked to the position of the rudder and said. With a little manipulation of the rudder, combined with the original equipment measures of the warship, it is very easy to start the warship sailing again. But it will take a long time to cross the windless belt like this. Tina's beautiful eyes flashed for a while, and she said bluntly, the kinetic energy on the warship may not be enough. Then leave from the windless zone. Anyway, it's enough to move with the wind and drift. Liang said with a smile. Under his control, the entire warship gradually drove away from the windless area. Returning to the Great Channel, a breeze was ushered in. Driven by the breeze, the entire warship, 833 times on the right track, gradually began to sail. Liang left the rudder position easily. The direction in which the warship sails also has a specific direction and position. With the breeze blowing, the entire warship sailed in this sea area at a considerable speed. A sound of crashing in the blue water. Under the sun. The sea showed a golden light, flickering constantly. Liang returned to the seat, lying on the chair looking up at the sky, feeling comfortable. It is very interesting that I have drifted in the sea for several days without encountering an island. Fortunately, there are plenty of supplies on board, so there is basically no need to worry about insufficient food. Moreover, Liang also knows the knowledge of sailing. You can check the changes in the weather. When there is a storm or other weather, he can detect it at the first time, and then take measures to avoid it. Although he is not afraid of storms. But this warship could not withstand the erosion of the storm. In addition, there are 3 lovely wives on the warship, and it is even more impossible for him to throw Hancock and others into the dangerous storm. At this time, CDFB, Hancock glanced at the blue words in front of him and asked softly, "Where are we going?" She stood on the deck with her hands on the fence, and had changed into loose clothes, otherwise she would always be wearing a cheongsam, wrapping her figure, and it was very uncomfortable. If you are not careful, the cheongsam may be broken directly. Her figure has grown quite clearly. Therefore, after discussing with Tautu, Tina and others, they all decided to avoid tight clothes as much as possible during this time. In order to make the second development more obvious, if they wear looser clothes, it can be more effective to make the body develop more violently. Thought here. Hancock's face was blushing, and he looked at Liang calmly. His face was like a cloud in the sky, with a colorful halo emerging, which was beautiful and moving. The results of the 3 of them talked about the specific reasons that led to the second development. It must be, because Liang nourishes them too much. Therefore, they directly let them develop a second time. This time there is a lot of development time, and the scale of development is also very obvious. Chapter 626 arrived. NLT, 49 and GT. This time there is a lot of development time, and the scale of development is also very obvious. Every night, when they were bathing, they could find that the scale became even bigger. This development makes them feel very shy. Especially in these few days, every night, they were attacked by Liang's stormy battle, making them very tired at night. But fortunately, after Liang's massage, all the tiredness was swept away. It may be because of the fierce battle that their bodies and other aspects have developed so clearly. Therefore, they gritted their teeth and forcibly withstood Liang's rapid attack. Although in the end, they were all defeated and fell asleep directly. But this persistence is still very effective. The next morning, they could feel that the 2 groups in front of them seemed to have more weight. Ahead, I see a huge island. Tautu's beautiful eyes flickered, and she whispered. She was wearing white loose clothes at the moment, with a slender and thin body. She could clearly perceive that the 2 groups were huge and developed quite obviously. Have you finally touched the island? Liang stood up from the chair and said with a smile. After wandering for so long, I finally came across an island. I just don't know whether he recognizes this island or not. This island seems to be huge. Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and her big eyes were a bit bright, she said. Front. An island, with the approach of the warship, is also constantly enlarged. There is no end to it at a glance, as if it is a continent, very huge. This island seems a little familiar. Liang's mouth moved slightly and said slowly. Is this the end of our trip? After wandering for so long, we finally arrived at this island. Hancock's pretty face showed a bit of a smile and said softly. Do you want to log in? 3 wives. Liang looked at Hancock and the 3 with a smile and asked. Of course, anyway, we have been drifting for so long. If we don't go to the island to take a look, wouldn't we have drifted for so long in vain? Tina rolled her eyes and said. We should be at the forefront of the Great Channel now. Tautu thought for a while, looked around, and said tentatively. After wandering for so long, he should soon arrive at the front end of the Great Channel. Probably. However, we also have to look at the direction. What if we just keep wandering in circles? Isn't that the middle area all the time? Liang said with a smile. Yeah, but I feel like we shouldn't be in circles. Tautu tilted her head, shook her hair, and nodded. On the sea, without a reference, can we still tell where we are sailing? Liang said directly. This is also true. Unless, with the stars at night as a reference. But here, Liang had never heard of the existence of the Big Dipper. Soon. The entire warship has gradually approached the island in front. This cannot be described as an island. This is simply a huge continent. There is no end to the area at a glance, and it can be seen how huge this island is. Chapter 627-Alabasta. What island is this? And it seems that I have never been here before. Tina's beautiful eyes flashed, and she couldn't help asking softly. The area of this island is too huge. There must be a kingdom on this. Such a huge island, if there is no kingdom, it is really too difficult to rule such a huge area. Come on, let's go ashore. Liang drove the warship to the area on the shore and said bluntly. Yeah. Hancock and the others nodded quickly and shook their hair. They looked at the whole picture of the island with beautiful eyes, and found that they could not see the end at a glance. Moreover, there are many buildings standing here, blocking their eyes. The warship stopped ashore. Liang jumped off the deck, anchored the warship, and stabilized in this area. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also stepped down from the boat, their beautiful eyes flickering, looking at the endless arid desert ahead. It's still a desert here. Hancock's face changed and he whispered to himself. Desert. Liang's eyes narrowed slightly, feeling a little familiar. However, if the island is full of deserts, such islands are also very common in the Great Channel. Therefore, he couldn't tell whether the desert here was the kingdom he imagined. If so, that would be so much fun. Unexpectedly, wandering on the sea at will, actually came to a familiar place. But this also needs to be verified, and it is not necessarily what he imagined. Let's go and have a look. Liang's face was calm and he smiled. Yeah. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina followed behind Liang, walking from the shore area to the hot desert in front of them step by step. The sun was shining, and it was noon at this time. The hot temperature was really unpleasant. Fortunately, Liang and the others did not go far before they encountered an oasis. An oasis in the desert has also become a haven for people walking in the desert. Fortunately, there is a forest within 2 steps. With a smile, Liang glanced at Hancock and the others. He didn't feel anything about the temperature, but Hancock and the others were sweating a little on their foreheads, and their delicate cheeks were flushed and very attractive. It's so hot here. Hancock said, slightly complaining. If she had known it was so hot, she shouldn't have come. But what you say now is of no use. Come here, don't you just leave like this. This is of course impossible. Fortunately, their clothes were very loose, and a gust of wind blew, allowing them to relieve the heat a little. If they are still wearing those tight clothes, I am afraid that they may not be able to bear it now. Liang took Hancock and others into the forest smoothly. Woo! Hancock exhaled heavily, relaxed a little, and said, I finally felt this cool breeze, but it's going to get tanned by the sun. You are naturally beautiful, no? Liang rubbed Hancock's hair and said. Approaching Hancock at close range, he could smell the faint fragrance emanating from the other party's body, without any sour smell. He finally felt, what is a fragrant woman? Even when sweating profusely, there is still no odor. I see, there is a city ahead. Tina's beautiful eyes flashed and she lost her voice. Really? Chapter 627-Alabasta. Really? Li Ang turned his head and looked at him. Through the endless forest, I can vaguely see that there is indeed a city ahead. Taking a closer look, although the city is a bit dry, it is still huge. At least, it gives people a solemn feeling. It's getting more and more familiar. Li Ang whispered to himself, looking at the scene ahead, and said to himself. This familiar scene, I'm afraid, constantly overlaps with the place he imagined. Basically, he can be sure that this island, if nothing else, should be Alabasta. That's right. This is the kingdom of perennial drought, Alabasta. But now, Crocodile, who deliberately created the drought, has been sent away. Therefore, although the drought here is still there, it should not be so serious. Let's go into the city. Li Ang's eyes flickered, thinking of something interesting, said. Yeah. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina nodded in succession. In the forest, although it is not so hot, it is not a solution. Moreover, so far, they still haven't figured out what exactly this place is. Tautu was keenly aware of Li Ang's expression, and couldn't help but ask, do you know where this place is? Of course, do you want to know? Li Ang said with a smile. Yeah. The three women nodded in unison, and their big eyes blinked, which was really tempting. Kiss me. Li Ang revealed his true nature and smiled. Shameless. Hancock blushed, rolled his eyes, and looked very charming. However, she was the first to go out. After pecking on Li Ang's face, she quickly pulled away, her pretty face flushed red, and she was incomparably beautiful. Women are fragrant. This point, Li Ang can be absolutely certain. Even though the three of Hancock were already dripping with sweat, the smell on their bodies was still a direction, and there was no such thing as the smell of sweat. This made Li Ang have to change his mind. Could it be that the sweat of a woman is fragrant? She was quickly denied it. Maybe it's just an isolated example. And the three Hancock, Tautu, and Tina he encountered were just examples of this. Diaresis, come on. Tina grabbed Li Ang's arm and rubbed frantically in front of her. This made Li Ang feel the soft touch, showing a smile, and said bluntly, this place is called the Kingdom of Alabasta. Kingdom of Alabasta. The three girls looked at each other. Mei was very puzzled. They have never been to such a place, so naturally Zhao Liao Zhao is not very clear about the name. The history of this kingdom is not easy. While walking with the three daughters, Li Ang introduced, have you heard of the 20 kings who created the world government? Well, they are the ancestors of the Tianlong people. Hancock's pretty face showed a bit of disgust. Tautu and Tina also nodded, with a bit of disgust in their eyes. Dragon people, the worms of the world. Even as the navy, they were deeply disgusted. This Alabasta is the descendant of 20 kings. Their ancestors did not join the Holy Land Mary Joa, but chose to come here. Li Ang smiled slowly and said something that shocked the three women. This kingdom of Alabasta is actually a descendant of 20 kings. And, out of Mary Joa. What a great courage to choose to get rid of those rotten holy places, and choose to exist as an ordinary person, not as a Tianlong person. Chapter 628-Wangdu. What a strong spirit. Tautu said with a bit of admiration on her pretty face. If it were someone else, it would be worthwhile to exist as a celestial dragon. However, the people of this kingdom actually gave up their identity as Tianlong people and came here alone to create a kingdom, which really required a lot of courage. It's not too bold, it's just that their ideas are normal. They don't want to live the life of a Tianlong person because they think they are ordinary people. Li Ang explained with a calm expression. Soon, the group of four passed through the forest and finally saw a city ahead. They entered the city smoothly. Into the eye. A large group of people dressed in different colors and very different. Alabasta also has tourists and pirates from all over the world passing by. So, it is normal to see these people dressed differently here. On the contrary, the beautiful faces of Hancock, Tautu, and Tina beside Liang were really attractive. Walk in the city. The rate of return is as high as 100%. I don't know how much 773 and less jealous eyes are focused on Liang. But come to think of it, there should be quite a few. Being able to carry 3 such beautiful angels will definitely attract the envy of countless men. For these little things, Liang is not surprised. Jealousy, everyone has it. It seems that the place we came to is the prosperous area of this kingdom. Hancock's beautiful eyes flashed, looking at the prosperous scene of people coming and going on the street, and whispered. Indeed, you see. Liang pointed to the huge towering palace ahead and said. This is the palace. Tina's pink lips parted slightly and asked tentatively. The palace is very huge and resplendent. Here, it has become the most prominent building. Almost everyone passing by will focus on this place. Looking from a distance, Liang also felt that a solemn and majestic aura pervaded. Not surprisingly. Here, it should be the Palace of Alabasta. Unexpectedly, it was very interesting to arrive at the most prosperous royal capital in the entire kingdom of Alabasta all of a sudden. So, here, is CDCG able to see the legendary Princess Wei. This is also a beautiful little girl. The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly upturned, and he thought so with a meaningful smile. Aside. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina looked at Liang's smile, felt a little suspicious, and spoke one after another. What's your idea, with such a bad smile? Why does this smile feel familiar to me? This bad guy, I'm afraid, has another bad idea. Quote. The 3 of Hancock knew Liang quite well. When they saw this smile, they suddenly had some guesses. Am I like that? Liang came back to his senses, patted the 3 people's foreheads at once, and said, let's go, let's take a look everywhere. Alabasta, you haven't been here before. It sounds like you've been here before. Tina's pink lips moved slightly, and her pretty face showed a weird expression. I haven't been here, but I've heard of it. Chapter 628-Wangdu. I haven't been here, but I've heard of it. Liang directly grabbed Tina's little face, pinched it for a while, and the tears that hurt Tina came out. The pretty face was annoyed and looked at Liang angrily. At this time, Tina's delicate face became more and more red, and her delicate facial features, her angry appearance, had a different flavor. Tina is angry and ignores you. Tina walked ahead angrily, snorted, and said. Look at what you've done. Hancock rolled his eyes, glared at Liang with a charming look, stepped up and walked to Tina's side. The same is true for Tautu. The 3 women left Liang behind at once. This made Liang touch his neck. Well, it's my fault. Afterwards, he quickened his pace and walked to the side of the 3 girls with a smile on his face, where he could see the temperament of the monster Liang. This is the legendary Liang. But now, what I see is Liang who keeps smiling. This huge sense of contrast, even if others see it, they may not be able to recognize his identity. Good Tina, I was wrong. Liang grabbed Tina's tender little hand and whispered. Huh. Tina struggled for a while, but she stopped struggling when she saw that she hadn't let go. However, her face was annoyed, and it still did not dissipate. Under the offensive of Liang's sweet words, Tina's face quickly recovered, but looking at Liang's eyes, she was still very unkind. She said, do you still dare? Don't dare, my wife. Liang quickly shook his head and said. PFF'd. Tina burst into laughter. Seeing Liang's pitiful appearance, she felt a burst of laughter, and all the anger in her mood disappeared. This is Lian Yi. It turned out to be such an aggrieved look. Whereas she's still not satisfied, other people can't see Liang's demeanor at all. In the eyes of everyone, Li Ang was aloof and arrogant. However, such tenderness can only be shown to them. How could she be really angry with such a man? She couldn't bear to be angry. Well, how dare you lie to me? Li Ang pretended to be angry, grabbed Tina's armpit directly, and scratched together. Ahahaha. Tina smiled brilliantly, and immediately attracted the attention of countless people. Husband, people don't dare. Tina quickly begged for mercy, grabbed Li Ang's hand, and said with a pitiful look. I'll forgive you this time. Li Ang directly hugged Tina's slender waist and said. Feeling the temperature, Tina's pretty face blushed slightly, her beautiful eyes flickered, and she whispered, there are so many people here. You bad guy, you do it regardless of the occasion. What's wrong with holding my own wife? If they are jealous, let them be jealous. Anyway, I like it. The corners of Li Ang's mouth twitched slightly, and he smiled. Hearing this, Tina was shy in her heart, but her joy was sweeter than drinking honey. I protest. Hancock and Tautu quickly appeared beside Li Ang and said. I protest that the two of you, in broad daylight, have made such behaviors that disrupt the order of the streets. I express my strong condemnation. Hancock blushed and said with a bit of interest. Really? Li Ang glanced at Hancock, released his hands slightly, took advantage of Hancock's unpreparedness, pecked at the corner of the other's mouth, and left quickly. The attacked Hancock has not recovered, his pretty face is full of ruddy blood. Mei is annoyed, glared at Li Ang, and said, blatantly offend people, seriously protest. Chapter 629-extremely dangerous characters. Protesting is ineffective. If I protest again, I will do it. Li Ang said slowly with a smile. HMPH, I won't care about you this time. Hancock took a few steps back in fear, and said fiercely against Li Ang. She was really afraid that Li Ang would suddenly do something bad. There are so many people here, it would be really embarrassing and embarrassing to be seen. Hancock, why did you lose so quickly? Tautu looked at Hancock helplessly and said. This little girl, lost so fast. Cough cough. Hancock coughed dryly, a blush flashed across his face, and said, this bad guy, we can't fight him. We still have to admit defeat as soon as possible. Otherwise, who knows if this bad guy will suddenly do something bad. It's still Lady Empress who understands me. Li Ang said while holding the soft little hand of the Empress. He looked in Tautu's direction and said, then, Miss Tautu, what are your thoughts? I was just joking. Tautu's pretty face blushed slightly and said in a low voice. Not to mention Hancock, she was afraid that Li Ang would suddenly do bad things on the street. Even if she imagined that scene, her face felt hot, and she was very embarrassed. Okay, let's go, 3 lovely and charming wives. Li Ang rubbed Tautu's hair with satisfaction and said. The bad guy. Tautu felt the palm on her head, and her pretty face blushed. However, when Li Ang rubbed her hair, she always had a different feeling. Very safe. Like, there is an absolutely safe haven. Whenever Li Ang rubbed her hair, she involuntarily narrowed her eyes slightly, her mood relaxed for a while, and she liked this feeling very much. Peach Rabbit, what are you doing? We'll ignore you, let's go. Tina looked back, looked at Tautu who was standing in the same place, and said involuntarily. Ah, oh. Tautu came back to her senses, her face flushed crimson, and she quickly chased after him. The group of 4 really attracted the attention of everyone on the street. The faces that even women were envious of, were fixed on Tautu and Tina. As for Hancock's words, even women are moved. Every move has an elegant temperament, so that Hancock has a deep charm when he raises his hands and feet, and this charm exudes. Attract the people around him, whether they are men or women. A pair of eyes almost turned into a red heart. Okay, so beautiful. Who are these people? Forget one, all 3 are so beautiful and exciting. A pretty girl couldn't help herself, and whispered to herself, especially the beautiful big sister, I like her so much. The voices of these discussions spread directly to the ears of Li Ang and others. Li Ang looked at Hancock beside him, and said with a smile, "Hancock, you are fascinated even by little girls. This is too much. I'm so beautiful, what can I do about it?" Hancock shook his hair very smugly and said. The black and smooth hair was thrown in the air, and her delicate face was impeccable. Li Ang couldn't help reaching out and pinching Hancock's pretty face, and said, "You're still narcissistic. Don't you give it?" Hancock's beautiful eyes are very arrogant, looking at Li Ang angrily. "Hancock is so beautiful." Tautu and Tina covered their faces, like a little fangirl, lost their voices. "You too." Hancock blushed, and she always felt awkward when the people around her said these words. Chapter 629 Extremely Dangerous Characters. Hancock blushed, and she always felt awkward when the people around her said these words. "Okay, if we do this, we will attract more and more people. Do we still need to wear masks? Forget it, we don't need to be afraid here. My wife's face is naturally charming." Li Ang smiled and eased the atmosphere a little. The three of Hancock also restrained, their faces were still flushed, and they stopped talking loudly. In this way, it is also effective to get rid of the eyes of these people on the street. However, there are still some people who follow Li Ang and others. It can be seen that the minds of these people are naturally very impure. Are you going to kill them? Hancock's eyes narrowed slightly, and his pretty face flashed a bit of cold light. She is not a weak woman, she is one of the 7 Marshalseas, the Empress. Moreover, it is His Majesty the King of Daughters Island. In front of Li Ang, she looks like a weak woman, but if others treat her like this, it is a big mistake. Not only is she not a weak woman, she is also a strong woman with terrifying strength. All come. Li Ang's face was calm, and his body exuded a terrifying aura. He didn't look back, but he had already locked onto those few people. The domineering spread. Flowers. Buzz. A terrifying aura enveloped the people behind him. An instant, several people's eyes turned white, and with a direct thump, they fell to the ground, unconscious, foaming at the mouth, and fainted. Ah! There was a sensation on the street, and everyone was shocked when they saw the inexplicable fall of these people. Li Ang didn't care about the sensations behind, but took the three of Hancock and walked on this prosperous street, watching all kinds of alabasta little by little. He doesn't think that the fall of those few people can still be associated with their heads. The domineering and invisible impact of the Overlord is not something that ordinary people can perceive. In particular, in a place like Alabasta, there are only a handful of powerful people at the forefront of the remaining great waterways. 0. Naturally, there are definitely no people who can recognize the domineering look of an overlord. Huh. Suddenly, Li Ang stopped in his footsteps, his eyes flickered, and the corners of his mouth curled into an arc, and said with a smile, "Looks like we've been noticed." ... On a tall building a few hundred meters away from Li Ang and others. A girl in a sky blue shirt was surrounded by several guards. Her gaze was fixed on Li Ang's body, without blinking, her big eyes were full of solemnity and fear. She has sky blue hair, delicate facial features, fair and tender skin, no impurities at all, tall, devilish figure, slender waist, everything is perfect. In particular, it seems that her big eyes have a very innocent atmosphere. Princess Wei Wei, who is this person, and is it worth taking so seriously? The guard on the side bowed his head respectfully and asked. That's right. This beautiful girl is the princess of the kingdom of Alabasta, Vivi. Today, King Cobra is seriously ill and can no longer rule. Therefore, many things are left to Wei Wei to handle. The current Vivi has vaguely represented the king of the kingdom of Alabasta. Although not in name, but in many things, she represents the king. Of course it's worth it. This monster is an extremely dangerous and terrifying figure. Wei Wei took a deep breath, her big eyes were full of heavy weight, and she stared at Li Ang and the others walking on the street without blinking. A long time. She opened her mouth slowly and said, "You must know that he is legendary, Li Ang." Chapter 630-Invitation. Li Ang. The eyes of several guards gradually enlarged, and the fear in their eyes could not be concealed. They looked at the young man on the street ahead, and the whole person's expression was not very good. They naturally heard of Li Ang's name. I believe that in this sea area, basically no one does not know the existence of Li Ang. It's just that they didn't expect that a monster like Li Ang would suddenly come here. They are only the front-end area of the Great Channel, and there should be no monsters of this level. For example, the appearance of the four emperors in the Great Channel will naturally cause great turmoil. Not to mention, Li Ang, who is more famous than the four emperors. Princess Vivi, why did such a monster come to us in Alabasta? A guard looked terrified and could not help asking. May 17 inches, I don't know. Wei Wei fluttered her sky blue hair. Her big eyes were very smart looking ahead. Her eyes were fixed on Li Ang's body, and she didn't move. Now she, after gradually coming into contact with many affairs in Alabasta, has also gotten rid of the original greenness and immaturity. Today, Wei Wei's dress and manners exude an elegant temperament, and the nobility that belongs to the princess is undoubtedly evident. Mature body, as if to break the clothes, pure and flawless delicate face, skin like jade, white and flawless. Just like in the snow, there is no pollution like fine feather snow, and there is no trace of stains. Let's invite this Mr. Li Ang. This is Alabasta. Since we welcome such a distinguished guest, we naturally have to entertain him. Furthermore, it can also prevent him from causing unnecessary trouble on the island. Just like just now, the few people who followed behind were defeated by invisible forces. Wei Wei's beautiful eyes flickered, her pink lips parted slightly, and she said in a low voice. Yes, Princess Vivi. Several guards nodded quickly. The main reason for the invitation was because Wei Wei was afraid that Li Ang would cause some conflicts in Alabasta. If the conflict broke out, Li Ang's terrifying power would be unstoppable. So, on the territory of Alabasta, as the princess of a country, she must avoid as much as possible, fighting against such a terrifying person as Li Ang. If there is a fight, it won't do her any good. Moreover, she believes that even with all the power of the country, it is basically impossible to fight against Li Ang. Not to mention their entire country. Even if it is multiplied by 10 times the military strength, it will not help Li Ang in front of him. Immediately, Wei Wei retracted her gaze, led the guards behind her, and walked down the floor step by step. In the face of such a distinguished guest, as the princess of a country, she naturally has to welcome it in person. If it is an ordinary guest, it is enough to send an escort there. But this is no ordinary guest, this is Li Ang. Just these two words can represent absolute identity. It is the best way to prevent Li Ang from causing conflict here and bring the other party to the palace as a guest. In this way, you can also invisibly warn the people around you. Li Ang is a guest of the palace, but not everyone can make up their minds. This can avoid some guys who don't have eyes, and a conflict suddenly broke out with Li Ang. Soon, Wei Wei walked down the floor and led a few guards to the street ahead. On both sides of the street, pedestrians gave way and looked at Wei Wei very respectfully. For them, Wei Wei is the savior who saves them from dire straits. What's more, this is still the princess of a country, how can they not be in awe? It's just, how could Princess Wei Wei suddenly appear here? Chapter 630-Invitation. It's just, how could Princess Wei Wei suddenly appear here? This made the people around them very puzzled. The other side. On the street. People come and go. Li Ang's eyes narrowed slightly, and with a smile, he said, "The people who greet us are here." What? Hancock expressed confusion and asked in doubt. The leader of the Kingdom of Alabasta knows that we are here. So, she came to meet us in person. This one, you see, the one in front. Li Ang pointed to the front with a smile and said. Heard. Hancock, Peach Rabbit, and Tina looked at them pleasingly. As expected. At first glance, they saw the fresh and beautiful and moving Princess Wei Wei. The other party's elegant and noble temperament, coupled with a delicate face that is harmless to humans and animals, seems pure and spotless like an angel. She is the leader. Tina's pink lips parted slightly, and her whole face was a little suspicious. At such a young age, obviously, much younger than her. She was almost twice the age of this little girl. Is a little girl of this age actually the leader of a country? This made the pretty faces of the three of them a little stunned, but soon, they all recovered. Although Hancock was surprised, it was reasonable. She was only a teenager when she became the king of Daughter Island. Therefore, for such a young national leader, she is acceptable. I thought I was unique. But after seeing the little girl in front of her, she knew that she was not unique. In this world, there are still girls who can assume the role of national leaders at such an age. This made Hancock have a slight affection for Wei Wei in front of him. The delicate face showed a sweet smile, and her beautiful eyes flashed. Wei Wei led a group of guards and arrived in front of Li Ang, looking restrained and respectful. Pedestrians around were stunned. Princess Wei Wei, are you looking for this young man? How could this young man, He Nang, let Princess Wei Wei personally greet him? Hello, Mr. Li Ang. Wei Wei bowed respectfully, smiled sweetly, and greeted politely. With her magnificent figure, when she bowed, a piece of white flowers caught Li Ang's peripheral vision. Although it was very short, Wei Wei straightened her body, but at that moment, Li Ang still saw that the two waves of the other party were quite perfect. Princess Wei Wei, how are you? 4.7. Li Ang said with a smile. Do you know who I am? Wei Wei's beautiful eyes were round, she was a little surprised, and asked in a voiceless voice. She didn't expect that Li Ang would know the name of a princess in her small area. You must know that even Crocodile, who once controlled the entire Alabasta, was just a younger brother in front of the Li Ang in front of him. Or the kind of little character who can be suppressed by turning his hands. It is such a small crocodile, but when he was in Alabasta, he could turn clouds and rain. Vivi had to survive in front of Crocodile, hiding it as a spy. Comparing her to Li Ang again, it can be seen how far and huge the gap in identity is. Even though she was a noble princess, she stood in front of Li Ang, and her so-called princess status was just a decoration. Chapter 631-Palace as a guest. I heard that Princess Wei Wei of Alabasta is a pure, charming and beautiful angel in white. It's better to be famous than to meet, as expected. In my opinion, it's indescribable to just use the angel in white. At the very least, you have to add a word to match your appearance. Delicious food, quote. With a smile, Li Ang looked at Wei Wei in front of him and said bluntly. Wei Wei's beauty is different from that of Hancock and others. The angel in white is described as Wei Wei. A pair of smart big eyes seems to be able to speak, tall body, should be big, slender waist and long legs, a pure and innocent delicate face. At a glance, you can see that this is an innocent little girl with no scheming. Mr. Li Ang is joking. Wei Wei's pretty face was slightly red, and she couldn't help Li Ang's praise, and whispered. It was the first time she was praised so blatantly by others. Moreover, it is still so direct, not euphemistic at all. Although she knew that many people were commenting on her delicate appearance, she was still very shy when she heard it from a boy for the first time. In particular, this man, 23, is a terrifying monster with terrifying strength and fame. Such a man is naturally different from those gangsters who deceive little girls with a few words. The same words, spoken in different people, will bring different effects. The bad guy. Aside, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina rolled their eyes one after another, and glanced at Li Ang angrily. This guy is going to deceive the little girl again. Simply, there is no bottom line. No, I'm just telling the truth. But, please, is there anything wrong with Princess Wei Wei looking for me? We just happened to pass by, so don't be too nervous. Li Ang kept smiling and said slowly. My father should have come to greet you, but it's really inconvenient for my father to go out because he is ill. So, let Wei Wei come to greet you, Mr. Li Ang, instead of father. I want to invite you, Mr. Li Ang, to be a guest in our palace. We will definitely entertain you and show the friendship of the landlord. Please don't mind. Wei Wei calmed down her breathing a little, her face still flushed a bit, and said. Almost driven by Li Ang's words, he forgot what he was going to do. This made her even more shy, and even her voice became unnatural. A guest at the palace. Li Ang's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, That's natural, I can be invited to the palace as a guest. Besides, I was invited by a beautiful angel. I definitely can't refuse. Mr. Li Ang, please. Wei Wei couldn't stand Li Ang's praise. She blushed slightly, turned her head, and whispered. Let's lead the way, Princess Vivi. Li Ang said with a smile. Yeah. Wei Wei walked in front and nodded lightly. Immediately, she led Li Ang and others all the way to the direction of the palace. On the way, a group of people stared blankly at Li Ang led by Princess Wei Wei. Their eyes widened, and their whole face was full of stunned expressions. What's the situation? Princess Wei Wei went out in person, just to invite guests. Princess Wei Wei, whom they respected, would actually be dispatched for a mere guest. My God, what is the origin of this guest? Unexpectedly, Princess Wei Wei has come out in person. It's a big deal. Do you know who they are? I don't know, but those three women are really beautiful. Compared with Princess Wei Wei, they are not inferior at all. Chapter 631 Guest at the Palace. I don't know, but those three women are really beautiful. Compared with Princess Wei Wei, they are not inferior at all. Quote. A group of people started talking. But there is no way to know the identity of the young man. Although they occasionally received news from the sea, many people only remembered it for a while, and then gradually forgot. Therefore, it is normal that they did not recognize Li Ang's identity. However, it can be greeted by Princess Wei Wei in person. The identity of the young man also made them have to pay attention. That young man's identity is definitely not simple. Some of the little gangsters who were just around the corner had to back down. People who can be invited to the palace as guests, they don't dare to provoke them at will. Although, they also wanted to strike up a conversation with that extremely beautiful and moving woman, but they did not have the courage to do so. In particular, the gangsters who fell in a strange way just now reminded them of these mysterious people. Maybe, these people fell inexplicably because of these mysterious people. Otherwise, why do you see several people falling down at the same time? If it's just poisoning or illness, it's impossible to time it so accurately. Therefore, they have absolute reasons to suspect these mysterious people. However, it's just suspicion. They don't have any evidence, and they don't dare to go any further. All in all, because of the appearance of Wei Wei, it also effectively restrained the minds of some people. It's all gone, it's all gone. A middle-aged man waved his hand and said. That man's face is so familiar. You feel it too. I feel it too. I seem to have seen the face of this man somewhere. A group of people whispered, but still shook their heads and sighed. The memory is so bad that they can't remember at all. The other side. Li Ang, Hancock and others, under the leadership of Wei Wei, have arrived at the gate of the palace. A magnificent palace is presented in front of you. The surrounding 200 walls are decorated with luxurious decorations, very grand, with a solemn atmosphere, and there are rows of guards on both sides. There are also patrol teams to prevent enemy attacks at all times. As the most prominent place in the Kingdom of Alabasta, nature guards are quite strict. Mr. Li Ang, please come in. With a pure smile on her face, Wei Wei stretched out her hand to signal. I am really flattered to have such a beautiful and moving little angel lead the way for me. Li Ang looked at Wei Wei with a smile and said. Immediately, Wei Wei's pretty face flashed a bit of blush again, and her beautiful eyes flashed a bit of shyness, and she shifted her attention and stopped looking at Li Ang. She was really afraid of Li Ang's molesting again. Seeing the cute appearance of Wei Wei's blushing face, Li Ang laughed out loud, looked at Hancock and the others with bad faces beside him, and said, "My lovely and charming wives, please. You are acquainted." The three of Hancock snorted and took the initiative to walk in front. "Are these three Mr. Li Ang your wife? They are really beautiful." Wei Wei's pretty face showed a bit of curiosity, and she said in a low voice. "Yeah, they're beautiful. In my opinion, they're the most beautiful." Li Ang nodded and said. When the conversation changed, he smiled at Wei Wei in front of him and said, "Just like you, you are also the most beautiful little angel." Chapter 632-Ready for Battle. Cough cough. Wei Wei coughed dryly, her face blushed, and she couldn't bear it anymore. "Mr. Li Ang, please come in." After she hurriedly left the sentence, she took a pair of long, straight and slender legs and plunged straight into the palace in front of her. "See." With a deep smile in his eyes, Li Ang looked at the guards beside him and walked forward step by step. The guards on both sides looked at Li Ang's back with suspicious eyes, unable to speak for a long time. Flirting with Princess Vivi. Besides, Princess Wei Wei is still blushing. They have never seen this situation before. Could it be that Princess Wei Wei has a sweetheart? Does Princess Wei Wei have a sweetheart? My God, my dream is broken. You're the only one who dreams. Don't you have any points in your heart? Princess Vivi is the most beautiful angel in Alabasta. Go away, I can't even dream about it. Quote. Several guards started a conversation one after another, with a bad-looking conversation. At this time, as soon as Li Ang stepped into the palace, he felt a solemn atmosphere. The hall in the palace is very empty, and there are basically not many decorations, but the decorations are on the surrounding walls, and there are crystal lamps hanging from the ceiling. The sun shines, and through the translucent window, it falls on the ground. The whole palace looks resplendent, quite luxurious and grand. "Mr. Li Ang, please take a seat, I'll report to the king now." Wei Wei blushed, Nemo dared not face Li Ang, and whispered. "Soon." After she finished speaking, she immediately left here. The appearance of fleeing in the wild, it is not too fast. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina looked at Li Ang suspiciously, looked up and down, and said, "You bastard, wherever you go, you can't control your care at that moment." Seeing the scene of Wei Wei fleeing and her face blushing. Where are they still not clear? Li Ang was obviously teasing Wei Wei, and, most importantly, Wei Wei took advantage of it. Obviously, Wei Wei was so shy that she was teased by Li Ang, but she didn't show any disgust. Could it be that this guy Li Ang has such a strong personality? Think of this. Hancock had to take a good look at Li Ang, and said suspiciously, "Why can't I see your charm?" "Hancock, I think your ass is itchy." The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and he walked to Hancock's side and said, "Go." Hancock's face turned rosy and bloody, and he glanced at Li Ang angrily and said, "This is a public place. Moreover, it is still in the palace." Li Ang, a bad boy, dared to say these words so blatantly, it was shameless. "Don't come here, don't infect me with your shameless skin." Hancock hurriedly avoided Li Ang's salty pig hand and said angrily. With a smile on his face, Li Ang suddenly appeared behind Hancock and slapped it down. Snapped. A crisp sound came out. That tender touch really made Li Ang linger. "You." Hancock's beautiful eyes flicked, his pretty blushing flushed, and he quickly looked around. Chapter 632-Waiting for It. Hancock's beautiful eyes flicked, his pretty blushing flushed, and he quickly looked around. Seeing that there was no one around, she breathed a sigh of relief. However, a delicate and pretty face looked at Li Ang angrily without blinking. Especially when he saw Li Ang, he even smelled the smell on his hand. The intoxicated expression made Hancock's face ruddy like the sunset on the horizon. Immediately, Hancock gritted his silver teeth, glared at Li Ang fiercely, and said, "You pervert. Hancock, it seems that I didn't beat you well yesterday. Let you dare to challenge your husband's majesty today." Li Ang's eyes flickered and he smiled. "Huh." Hancock snorted arrogantly, raised his delicate little face, and looked invincible. The black and supple hair was thrown vertically on the back of the powder, the skin was as white as jade, and the face was red, so that Li Ang couldn't help but want to take a bite. Dang dang dang. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps. Li Ang's eyes shifted slightly, and he saw that Wei Wei was helping a middle-aged man to come, and beside him, there was a curly-haired man with very unique features. Mr. Li Ang. Cobra, who was being supported, looked at Li Ang in front of him with a bit of solemnity on his face, and said in a low voice. "Visible. His condition is not optimistic, he has become so weak. Even, his hair is already half white, and the power of time is eroding his body, causing him to age day by day, faster than ordinary people." At the beginning, when he learned of Li Ang's appearance, he was also deeply shocked. The first time, he asked Wei Wei to invite Li Ang over as a guest. "Never, let his people provoke the monster Li Ang, otherwise, Alabasta will be destroyed into a desert." He never doubted whether Li Ang had this ability. King Cobra. Li Ang looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and said calmly. "Diaresis, I'm ill, and I've lost my way, please don't take offense, Lord Li Ang." Cobra coughed violently, and his face flushed a little, looking very uncomfortable. "Father." Wei Wei's pretty face was anxious for a while, and she patted Cobra's back to relieve the other party's uncomfortable state. "My lord the king." Ecolam, who was the housekeeper beside him, quickly took out the medicine and put it on Cobra's mouth, looking very anxious and full of regret. "A king who loves his country and his people will not end well. This is a great regret." After taking the medicine, Cobra's state recovered a little, looking at Li Ang in front of him, and said, "Mr. Li Ang, I have already ordered the staff if you want to stay in Alabasta. The palace has already prepared for you. Ready to live." "Thank you very much then," Li Ang said in surprise. "Did not expect. Even these things, Cobra is ready. This king is really not an ordinary man. This case, even if there is a conflict, thank Zhao, Li Ang will definitely not make things worse because of the other party's face." It can be seen that Cobra's head is quite flexible, he knows how to review the situation, and he uses his sincere attitude to welcome a big man like Li Ang. "Ecolam, instruct the staff to prepare it. Tonight's dinner must be held in a grand manner. 4. Welcome Lord Li Ang to visit us in Alabasta." Cobra turned to look at Ikaram beside him, and instructed. "Yes." Ecolam nodded quickly and agreed. Although Li Ang knew that this was deliberately done in front of him to show him. However, Cobra has such a heart, which is enough to prove that they welcome Li Ang very seriously. Under such polite treatment, Li Ang naturally would not take action against Alabasta easily. This is Cobra's idea, how to say, he has to stabilize Li Ang. At least, before Li Ang leaves, he must do his best to entertain the other party to avoid unnecessary trouble. Chapter 633-Cobra's Disease. Will it be too solemn? Li Ang said slowly with a smile on his face. No. Cobra shook his head and said very solemnly, "Mr. Li Ang can visit us in Alabasta, and let us all flourish in Alabasta. Naturally, setting up a dinner party is nothing. Then I'm welcome." Li Ang's eyes flashed and he smiled. Since the other party is so persistent, he naturally won't say anything more. Here in Alabasta, being invited to a dinner party seems to be a good thing. "Mr. Li Ang, you don't have a place to live, do you?" Cobra knew that Li Ang and the others had just arrived in Alabasta, so naturally it was impossible to find a place to live. Immediately, he spoke again. "If you don't mind, there are a few vacant houses in the palace, you can live in whatever you want. Just, I don't know, what do you think, Mr. Liang? Really? Then I'm welcome. Liang said with a very exciting expression on his face. Don't be polite, Mr. Liang, this is what we should do. Cobra laughed and said. After a long time of contact, he is not as nervous as at the beginning. Because he found that Liang was seriously inconsistent with the rumored vicious appearance. Obviously 513, the Liang in front of him is obviously a gentle and elegant young man. Although he has a terrifying strength, he is quite polite. To be able to possess such a powerful strength, yet maintain his own mentality, without becoming a berserker, is already very remarkable. Therefore, he could feel that Liang's mentality was as firm as a mountain. It is no wonder that such a person can become such a powerful person. King Cobra is really different. Liang also showed a smile and said. Mr. Liang, it doesn't match the rumors. Cobra said with a smile. So, what do you think of me? With a bit of curiosity, Liang asked with a smile. Heard. Cobra was not restrained, thought for a moment, and said directly, Mr. Liang, in my impression, is a powerful and terrible monster. He has no bottom line for doing things, and he is a murderous executioner. But when I saw him today, it completely overturned my thoughts. The Mr. Liang I saw today is a gentle and elegant young man. Although he has a terrifying strength, he did not rely on his own strength to bring pain to others. Such a strong person, in my heart, is the real strong person. After Cobra spoke, he was not nervous or timid at all. He admits that he sees people very accurately. The Liang in front of him is not the kind of executioner who can kill people indiscriminately, so he is very relaxed when he talks, and he doesn't need to worry too much. In that case, the rumored me is still the one who brings nightmares to countless people. No wonder so many people fear me. It's all the rumors. Liang's face was calm, he couldn't help but smile and said. He was not angry, on the contrary, seeing Cobra's expression, he was also satisfied. It is also an easy thing to be able to communicate with others on a regular basis. If Cobra was nervous, then communicated, but there was no such feeling. Cough cough. Cobra coughed suddenly, his face flushed, and he took a deep breath before calming down a little. Father, why don't you go back and rest? Wei Wei's pretty face showed a bit of nervousness and worry, she suggested. Cobra's condition is getting worse. While not incurable, it is difficult to treat. Chapter 633 _ Cobra's disease. While not incurable, it is difficult to treat. It takes a long time to recuperate and may fail. At that time, it is really powerless to go back to heaven. So, Wei Wei was very worried. If Cobra suddenly left, what would she do? Lord Cobra, I think Mr. Liang can understand. You should go to rest, otherwise, it will affect your body. Ekolem also said with a worried mood. No hurry. Waved his hand and said bluntly, CDCC. He looked at Liang in front of him and continued, Mr. Liang, please forgive me if the reception is not good. My body can't support it for such a long time, so I will leave. Wait a minute. Liang suddenly reached out to stop it. Under the suspicious eyes of Cobra, Vivi and others. Liang first glanced at Cobra's pale face and said, let me take a look at your condition. Otherwise, why are you attending the dinner tonight? Since Cobra is so polite, it is normal for him to help the other party to treat him. Reciprocal exchanges are not unilaterally thanks to Cobra's help. Mr. Liang, do you still heal? Cobra asked with a surprised expression on his face. Nature. With a smile on his face, Liang nodded and said, my medical skills are even higher than those you see on a daily basis. Really? Wei Wei's beautiful eyes flickered, her long eyelashes trembled, and her big eyes were fixed on Liang's body. In his eyes, there was a look of anticipation that could not be concealed. If Cobra can be cured, that would be the best. Moreover, the person in front of him is Liang. Although Liang is famous for his terrifying strength, in the same way, the terrifying piano level that has recently swept the entire sea area is also from Li Yang's hands. Therefore, in the eyes of many people, Li Yang represents an authority in any field. Holding a glimmer of hope, Wei Wei couldn't help but want Li Yang to try it. It doesn't hurt to let Mr. Li Yang take a look. If it can be cured, it will be even better. Cobra was very indifferent and smiled. Seeing that Alabasta is peaceful and safe, he was relieved. Even if he was told now that he was terminally ill, he would not feel any panic. The only pity is that I can't see the picture of Wei Wei getting married and having children. It was the only place in his heart that he felt sorry for. Besides, he has no other burdens. However, if it can be treated, he naturally does not want to die so early. You can give it a try, Li Yang said with a calm face. He has absolute certainty, but when he speaks, he can't say too much. Anytime, something unexpected happens. Once you talk too much, if you can't finish it, it will really be a shame. Well, Mr. Li Yang, I'll thank you for your help first. Cobra smiled lightly and said. Regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, Li Yang was able to do something for a little king like him, which was already a good deal for him. What is he not satisfied with? You must know how many people in this sea area are terrified to even talk to Li Yang. And he has done a very good job. Chapter 634_plan. Start here. Cobra glanced at the empty hall and asked. Just find a place to sit down. I'm just observing your condition. It's very fast, and it won't take too much time for you. So, it doesn't matter where you are, Tilda. Li Yang waved his hand and said very calmly. With the absolute medical skills given by the system, he can handle any symptoms with confidence. Good. Cobra nodded. With Wei Wei's support, he walked to the sofa beside him and sat down for a while. His whole body looked very weak, his back was on the sofa, his eyes were a little distracted. Father. Vivi let out a low voice from the side, preventing Cobra from suddenly falling asleep. It doesn't work. It's only been a while and I feel very sleepy. Cobra sighed helplessly and said. This made Wei Wei feel very distressed. Recalling her father who held her up high in the past, now, aged and suffering from illness, her heart is bleeding, biting her pink lips, and her beautiful eyes are a little misty. Ekolem secretly wiped the corners of his eyes from the side, feeling sorry for a while. It's not a complicated disease, what about you? Li Yang glanced at Wei Wei's red eyes, and laughed. The lovely Wei Wei is still silent in grief. But after hearing Li Yang's words, the pretty face showed a bit of anticipation. Looking at Li Yang with hope, the original grief turned into hope. Maybe, it really can. This is Mr. Li Yang. It must be a success. It's just, if it succeeds, then, am I not? Thought here. Wei Wei's face turned red for a while, and her beautiful eyes flashed a bit of shyness. Aside. Ekolem looked at Wei Wei's expression fluctuating, and a smile appeared in his eyes. Her Royal Highness is still too impulsive. It wasn't long after that promise was made. Unexpectedly, we met. If Mr. Li Yang can really heal King Cobra, doesn't that mean? If it is Mr. Li Yang, it is also the most suitable candidate. At this time, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also stood beside Li Yang without speaking. In this atmosphere, they kept a quiet mood and did not disturb Li Yang's thinking. Li Yang came to Cobra's side and checked the pulse rate of the other party a little, and the feeling of domineering spread. Who would have thought that seeing and hearing sex is domineering and used to investigate other people's illnesses? This method is not available to everyone. I'm afraid, in the world, only Li Yang is alone. Huh. Li Yang let out a sigh, and the expression on his face changed slightly. What's wrong? Wei Wei's beautiful eyes flashed, and she asked nervously with a bit of heaviness. I think I should know what the symptoms are. In Li Yang's head, countless treatment options emerged. The medical skills given to him by the system are not covered. There are three most suitable solutions in the final selection. For others, it is very difficult to treat. But for Li Ang, the entire treatment process can be cured in less than a day. However, follow-up needs to be continued. But as long as the disease and the problem of recuperation are solved, it is free. What symptoms do you know? Chapter 634_plan. What symptoms do you know? Wei Wei's big eyes twinkled like stars in the sky, and she asked again, then, Mr. Li Ang, can you do anything? At this time, both Cobra and EPUB couldn't help but look at Li Ang with strong anticipation. I originally planned to give it a try, but I didn't expect that Li Ang could really see what the symptoms were. No other doctor can do this. Only some drugs can be used for experimental treatment. Li Ang can actually see it. It can be seen that the other party's medical skills are obviously not as simple as they imagined. Yes, there are 3 methods in total. Li Ang nodded and said with a smile, so, you need to choose. 3. Wei Wei's pink lips trembled, and her pretty face was shocked. Not only the treatment plan, but also, there are so many 3. Oh my god. This is the real doctor. Which is the best one? Wei Wei took a deep breath and asked. There is no best, only the most suitable. Li Ang shook his head. The first type requires a day of treatment, but requires specific medicinal materials for torment. The second type, it takes 2 hours. I will do the acupuncture. The third type, a combination of the 2, while drinking the medicine, stitch on one side. Katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. Then may I ask Mr. Li Ang, which is more suitable? What do you think? Wei Wei's beautiful eyes flashed and she asked in a low voice. I think it's all right. However, if you can't find the herbs I need, you can only do the second one. If you can find it, then the third one will be more conservative. Li Ang thought for a while and said slowly. Okay, then there's the third type. Excuse me, Mr. Li Ang, please list all the medicinal materials. We will definitely pack up the medicinal materials in the shortest possible time. Wei Wei's delicate face showed an excited look. Being able to treat it means that her father, the king, will not have to be sick in bed in the future. 0. There is no need to suffer from illness, and it will not age faster than others. Thinking of this, she couldn't hide her excitement. In addition to being excited, she forgot that some time ago, after seeing her old father who was suffering from pain, she saw a meteor streak across the promise she made. And this promise was overheard by EPUB. Soon. Li Ang had listed the medicinal materials for a total of 24 minutes, and the quantity and weight could not be less. It can't be less, and it can't be wrong. Li Ang handed the list of herbs to Wei Wei and said. Well, definitely. Wei Wei's pretty face was excited and nodded. She immediately instructed the staff, and asked the people under her to collect the medicinal materials according to this material. Regardless of any method, these medicinal materials must be collected. Moreover, there can be no errors in the quantity and quality components. Watching her subordinates leave, Wei Wei's mood could not be calmed down at all. Her little head is thinking all the time, the father's illness has finally been saved. Mr. Li Ang, I'm sorry to bother you. Cobra's face also turned a little rosy, and said very respectfully. This is his savior. Seeing Li Ang's confident appearance, he would never suspect that the other party was deceiving him. There is no need for this at all. You know, who is Li Ang? If he really wanted to deceive, he would not choose his little king to deceive. He was certain of this in his heart. Chapter 635 _ treatment. If there is no Liang, I am afraid that he will suffer from illness. That feeling is simply too painful, even now he is a little unbearable to look back on. In particular, he felt that his vitality was being lost at an alarming rate. He felt that he was excluded from this world. Incompatible with everyone. Almost desperate. Fortunately, at this time, Liang appeared. Is it really God's will? Cobra thought so, coughed a little, and was still as ill as ever. Okay, when they buy the medicinal materials, I'll give you acupuncture first. With a two-pronged approach, your condition will be cured in less than a day. And then, it will take some time to recuperate. During this time, if you continue to take in nutrients, you will be able to recover. Moreover, you may be able to rejuvenate your vitality. At that time, you, it seems, will definitely be old and strong. Liang said slowly with a smile. All this is brought by Mr. Liang. I express my great gratitude. Cobra said solemnly, if Mr. Liang needs help, feel free to speak. Although I know that my ability is not enough, but this is my heart, Mr. Liang, please don't dislike my ability as too small. 603. If you can give me a place to live, I'll be very happy. Liang laughed and said. If Cobra hadn't had such a good attitude, he wouldn't necessarily have appeared. However, since Cobra treats him so friendly to outsiders, he has to reward him for something. As the so-called ritual exchanges, isn't it all like this? Mr. Liang, what do I need to do to prepare? Cobra asked, breathing evenly. No need to prepare, just make an open space for me. Liang's face was calm and relaxed. Whether or not someone interferes with acupuncture is not a problem for him. With a domineering presence, even if someone interferes, he can treat him accurately and without error. So, if someone is watching, you don't need to care at all. Good. Cobra nodded, stood up from the sofa, walked to the open space and sat up, tentatively asked, Mr. Liang, is this possible? That's it. Liang nodded and smiled lightly. Mr. Liang, do we need to avoid it? Wei Wei asked with a bit of hesitation in her beautiful eyes. No, just watch it if you want. Liang shook his head and said casually. Others need to be very active when they need to do needles. That is when they are afraid of needles, there is no way to hit the exact position. However, these problems are basically not problems for Liang. He has a terrifying domineering look, and he also has precise eyesight, and he can do it without error. Even if he were allowed to do needles in the lively atmosphere of the square, he would not make a mistake. In the public eye, Liang searched, only to find that he did not seem to have the habit of carrying gold needles with him. This made him a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly, looked at Wei Wei, and said, I don't carry gold needles with me, do you have any ready-made here? Ah! Everyone was stunned. Silence. Even Cobra looked at Liang suspiciously. Is this really reliable? No matter how they looked at it, their original confidence had all disappeared without a trace. They didn't even carry medical equipment with them, so how could they trust Liang? I'll go look for it. Wei Wei's pretty face was a little stiff and she said. Chapter 635-treatment. Wei Wei's pretty face was a little stiff and she said. Less than 2 minutes. Wei Wei came back again and handed Liang some gold needles, a set of 24 neat gold needles. Really, is it possible? Wei Wei looked at Liang's back and couldn't help thinking about it. At the beginning, the confidence that Liang had built up for them also collapsed. Who would have thought that this guy Liang didn't even carry medical equipment? They had never seen such a doctor. CDFH, it seems, more amateur than professional. Don't worry, I rarely treat others. However, I have never made a mistake, and there is nothing that I can't treat. So, you can rest assured. Liang explained a little. It's okay if he doesn't explain, but when he explains it, it makes people feel a bit wanting to hide it. This made the hearts of both Wei Wei and Equilem tug, and they looked nervous, looking at Li Ang's back, their eyes fixed without blinking, their eyes focused. Aside. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina covered their pink lips and chuckled lightly. This is the Li Ang they know. But then again, to say that Li Ang is an amateur is also correct. After all, the number of times Li Ang actually practiced medicine is very limited, and he can count them on one hand. Therefore, many times they almost forget that Li Ang possesses superb medical skills. At this moment, Cobra's mood also became a little nervous. He was not nervous at first, but seeing Li Ang's behavior, he couldn't help but get nervous and couldn't contain it. Are you ready? Li Ang looked at Cobra and said. That's it. Cobra nodded, took a deep breath, and said calmly. Then I'll start. Li Ang's face was calm, and the domineering look on his body spread, covering Cobra's body. Buzz. He flicked a gold needle in his hand slightly and popped it straight out. Call out. The golden needle pierced Cobra's neck, submerged to a depth of about 5 centimeters, and only revealed about 2 or 3 centimeters outside. Wei Wei pressed her pink lips, and her beautiful eyes were tense. Especially seeing the picture of Cobra being stabbed by the golden needle, his legs were a little weak. So, will it really be okay? This is the first time she has seen this kind of medical treatment. The second gold needle. Li Ang immediately popped out. This time, the golden needle pierced the position of Cobra's earlobe. A numb feeling made Cobra feel a strange change in his body. My ears are numb and I can't feel anything. He gritted his teeth and forcibly endured the tension in his heart. This kind of treatment, let alone Wei Wei has never seen it, even him, in this lifetime, is the first time he has seen it from Li Ang. EPUB also gritted his teeth, his eyes widened. Seeing the picture of the golden needle piercing the skin, he shivered all over, and was obviously startled, his lips trembled, and his expression was a little frightened. He was a little unbearable, seeing this kind of picture, his hands and feet felt weak. Soon. The third needle, also pierced into Cobra's body, was in the position of the left arm. Fourth stitch, fifth stitch. The golden needles turned Cobra into a strange appearance. On his head, there was also a gold needle sticking out of it, looking very terrifying. Chapter 636 _ Medical Skills. Mr. Li Ang, is it really okay? Wei Wei asked with her pink lips slightly parted. Princess Wei Wei, don't disturb Mr. Li Ang for now. Let's ask after everything is done. Once you disturb Mr. Li Ang, I'm afraid, the situation will be even more unfavorable for Lord Cobra. Tilda. EPUB couldn't help it, reminded in a low voice. Although he looked at Cobra who was pierced with golden needles all over his body, he also doubted in his heart, would this treatment really work? However, seeing Li Ang's serious expression, he didn't dare to say a word. After disturbing Li Ang, the other party made a mistake in the process of treating Cobra, so they can't afford the consequences. Oh, I see. Wei Wei nodded and looked at Li Ang in fear after a while. Fortunately, it did not disturb the other party. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, seeing her father being pierced by so many golden needles, she also seemed very worried. Her delicate pretty face was full of tension, her pink fist was clenched tightly, and she couldn't hide her anxiety. So many golden needles are stuck in the human body, will it really be okay? This kind of treatment really opened up a whole new world for her. Immediately after, the 24 golden needles had all been pierced into Cobra's skin by Li Ang. There are 3 on the head and 21 on the body. The branches are in different positions. Whether it is the entrance or the depth, they are all adjusted to the most appropriate level. At this time, Li Ang looked at Cobra in front of him, retracted his gaze with satisfaction, turned to look at Wei Wei, and said with a smile, by the way, what were you asking me just now? No, it's all right. Wei Wei's lips trembled, shaking her sky blue hair, said. Seeing so many golden needles pierced into Cobra's body, even though she had 1,000 words in her heart, she couldn't say it. What can we do now? Cobra has been stabbed so many times by gold needles. Could it be that you still let Ling give up halfway? Not to mention whether the needle can be successfully completed this time. If it is abandoned halfway, I am afraid that it will also cause a lot of troubles. Therefore, she can only pray now that these golden needles will bring her good luck to Cobra, and dispel those pains in Cobra's body. Mr. Liang, how long does it take in total? EPUB took a deep breath and couldn't help but ask. Cobra's eyes flashed and he also looked at Liang. Right now, he couldn't move at all, his whole body seemed to be imprisoned, only his eyes could turn, and the rest could not move. He wanted to ask questions, but in the end, he couldn't open his mouth at all. Any questions can only be given up. How long? Liang thought for a while and replied, in total, it takes half an hour. Basically, there are 7, 8, and the remaining symptoms need to be treated with medicine. Is that so? EPUB and Vivi both exhaled heavily. For half an hour, they could still wait. Concerning the safety of Cobra's life, no matter how busy they are, they can't go away. Now, for them, the most important thing is to be guarded by Cobra's side, unable to leave. By the way, Mr. Liang, how did you know this? I have never seen such a treatment method since I was a child. Wei Wei thought about it, and asked with a little curiosity on her pretty face. I invented it, do you believe it? Liang said slowly with a smile. Letter. Wei Wei nodded lightly and said. It was the first time she saw such a treatment method. It came from Liang's hands. The other party said it was self-created, and she couldn't find any reason to refute it. Could it be that someone else created it? Chapter 636-Amazing Medical Skills. Could it be that someone else created it? But why? She only saw it from Liang's hand. Therefore, Liang said that he created it by himself, and it is quite convincing. Not to mention, if it is only in this world, Liang is really the first person to show such a treatment method. It's understandable to say he created it himself. Of course. The help of the system is also very great. Without the help of the system, it is basically impossible for him to obtain such unfathomable medical skills. Mr. Liang, do you think the process just now went smoothly? Wei Wei was a little nervous and asked. EPUB on the side also pricked up his ears and listened to Liang's answer. Didn't I say it a long time ago? I made a shot, and I won't make a mistake. If I was afraid of making a mistake, I wouldn't let you stand by my side and affect my needles. Liang said slowly with a smile. Flowers. Cough cough. At this time, Cobra coughed in a low voice, and a pair of eyes gradually filled with a trace of blood. Wei Wei exclaimed, her pretty face became anxious, and she lost her voice. Lord Liang, my father, what happened to him? Normal symptoms, don't worry. In half an hour, everything will be fine. Liang's face was calm, and he glanced at Cobra's changes, unmoved. Only. Cobra's appearance was very terrifying, which made Wei Wei very anxious, but there was nothing she could do. Half an hour passed by. In Wei Wei's heart, this half an hour was like a long wait for a year. Seeing that Cobra's bloodshot eyes gradually returned to normal, Vivi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there were no errors. At first, when she saw Cobra's change, she almost turned pale with fright. Mr. Liang. Wei Wei looked at Liang and whispered. Half an hour has come, she wants to remind Liang, lest the other party forget. I know. Liang understood, glanced at the delicate and lovely Wei Wei, and nodded calmly. Immediately. He looked at Cobra in front of him. After his acupuncture, Cobra's complexion also recovered a little bit of rosy. It can be seen that Cobra is recovering at an obvious speed. This. Wei Wei's pink lips were slightly parted, her beautiful eyes were round. Watching Cobra's changes, an ecstatic mood surged directly into her heart. She couldn't hide it, and her beautiful eyes were a little misty. Lord Cobra is better, much better. Ikaram's eyes were also red, her lips trembled, and her voice trembled. Other medical techniques have been used for several months, or even more than half a year, and the symptoms have not been resolved. However, in Li Ang's hands, it turned out to be effective in half an hour. This amazing medical technique is truly shocking. This is the real magician. All at once, Lord Cobra recovered so much. At this time, Wei Wei's beautiful eyes looked at Li Ang's back. She didn't know what to think of in her head. Her pretty face blushed slightly, and she lowered her head. Her beautiful eyes shone brightly, looking at her toes. Chapter 637-Peerless Doctor. Mr. Li Ang, why, Lord Cobra can't speak yet. EPUB's face changed, he hesitated, and asked. I didn't take the gold needle, so naturally he couldn't speak easily. After I took the gold needle, he was afraid that he would be able to jump around. Li Ang said slowly with a smile on his face. Under the eyes of Vivi and Ikaram. I see. Li Ang walked in front of Cobra, stretched out his hand a little, took off all the 24 golden needles, and put them into a small bag. At the same time, Cobra's face turned rosy for a while, and after Li Ang's half hour of needlework, his condition had obviously recovered a lot. Words cannot describe the state he was in half an hour ago, and his current state. Simply, they are already two different people. Cough cough. Cobra coughed and spit out a black, 330, colored filthy blood from his mouth. Wei Wei was quite frightened and asked, Mr. Li Ang, why is the father still vomiting blood? This is to clear the stains in his body. After clearing, his body will recover a lot. Therefore, it is very beneficial for him to spit out this blood. Li Ang's face was calm, and he smiled lightly. So it is. Wei Wei breathed a sigh of relief, looking at Cobra sitting cross-legged on the ground in front of her, her beautiful eyes filled with excitement. At this time, Cobra struggled to stand up from the ground, staggering. EPUB has quick eyes and quick hands, and quickly walked to help Cobra. Finally, it's not as uncomfortable as before. Cobra exhaled heavily, his lips turned white, and he looked at Li Ang in front of him. His eyes were full of gratitude, which he couldn't hide. It was Li Ang who rescued him from that weak state. It can also be said that Li Ang gave him a second life. If there is no Li Ang, then he will spend the rest of his life in the hospital bed. None of those quack doctors could cure his symptoms. However, Li Ang only took half an hour to restore his state to such a perfect state. He is simply a peerless doctor. In this world, the one and only genius doctor. Mr. Li Ang, thank you very much for your kindness. In the future, if there is something useful, please speak up. I will go through fire and water, and I will do whatever it takes. Cobra bowed solemnly and said seriously. Don't be so polite. Li Ang waved his hand and said with a smile, you haven't fully recovered yet. You need to drink the medicine made from the medicinal materials before you are close to recovery. Also, you need a period of time to adjust yourself. I'm afraid that you are still very uncomfortable with this body. You have to slowly rerun it. Healed from a serious illness. Naturally, even the ability to control the body is not as good as before. What Mr. Li Ang said is very true. Cobra nodded quickly in agreement. Without EPUB's support, I'm afraid he wouldn't even be able to stand for a certain amount of time. It's just that the spirit, energy and spirit in his body have been relieved in an extraordinary way. Therefore, he believes that within a few hours, he will be able to be more alive than before. King Cobra, you can rest for a while. Li Ang said with a smile. Good. Cobra nodded. EPUB asked, Lord Cobra, do you need to go back to your room to rest? No need, just rest on this sofa. Cobra shook his head and said. By the way, the medicinal materials are almost back. Li Ang looked at Wei Wei's delicate face and asked. Chapter 637-Peerless Doctor. Li Ang looked at Wei Wei's delicate face and asked. Probably, soon. Wei Wei didn't dare to meet Li Ang's eyes, her pretty face involuntarily showed a blush, and said weakly. See. Ikulem's eyes flashed a bit meaningful, and a smile appeared on his face. Her Royal Highness the Princess. The promise made has finally been fulfilled. It's just that even Her Royal Highness the Princess could not have predicted that it would be realized so quickly. Cobra lay on the sofa, closed his eyes slightly, and took a rest. Even Liang felt a bit of a strange look, and seeing the change in Wei Wei's pretty face, he couldn't figure out what the other party was thinking. Why are you so shy all of a sudden? He just saved Cobra, could it be that Wei Wei's heart is moved? I'm afraid, it shouldn't be so simple. Wei Wei is the princess of a country, how could she be so easily attracted to a man? Therefore, Liang was very puzzled. Less than 10 minutes. A row of guards in the palace came quickly, each of them carrying a large bag of medicinal herbs. Her Royal Highness Princess, fortunately not humiliated. One of the men knelt down in front of Wei Wei and said respectfully, Lord Liang, what do I need to do? Wei Wei looked at Liang and asked in a low voice. Boil for 3 hours. Liang thought for a while and said, 3 bells. Wei Wei was secretly surprised, and asked again, did you put all the medicinal materials in one off, boil out all the medicinal effects? Yes, of course, it's not impossible to separate. It's just that the time will be delayed a little. If you want to finish the treatment today, then boil all the medicinal materials into a bowl. Liang nodded and said, all right then. Wei Wei quickly gave orders to these men. The weight and other aspects of all the medicinal materials need to strictly follow the list given by Liang. A little more will not work, and a little less will not work. During this process, Wei Wei went to personally supervise, in order to prevent mistakes. At this time, Cobra slowly opened his eyes, looked at Liang's figure, and felt the sense of power coming from his body, which made him feel so excited that he couldn't help himself. How long? I haven't felt such healthy power in a long time. In the past, he was a sick child. And now, finally, let him feel the feeling of his own health. Although, there are still traces of symptoms entangled in his body. But now he is much, much better than he was an hour ago. And all of this was brought about by Liang in front of him. 1.6 Immediately. Cobra couldn't hide his gratitude and said, Mr. Liang, thank you so much. It's all thanks to you for my new life this time. He got up from the sofa. Ikulem's eyes flickered, and he said in a low voice, Lord Cobra. Seeing Cobra's healthy appearance, his whole heart was also very excited. Cobra walked in front of Liang, bowed deeply, and said, thank you again, Mr. Liang, it's you who gave me a second life. It's hard work, don't worry about it. Liang patted Cobra's shoulder and smiled. No, it's an easy feat for you. But, for me, it's surrogate parenting. You've brought me to my health. Cobra shook his head and said very respectfully. Chapter 638-Heal. Seeing Cobra's respectful appearance, Liang didn't want to say anything more, he smiled and didn't speak anymore. Cobra was right. Without him, Cobra would not have been able to heal at all. Moreover, Cobra will get older and older as time goes by, faster than ordinary people. This is for sure. It was precisely because of the appearance of Liang that this situation was avoided. Therefore, it is understandable that Cobra should be grateful to Liang. King Cobra, wait for 3 more hours. After drinking that bowl of medicine, you can rest for an hour. Your illness will be completely cured. When the time comes, you should really appreciate me. It's too early to tell. Liang said with a smile. Mr. Liang is right. Cobra was stunned, nodded and smiled. Immediately, Cobra continued to lie on the sofa and rested, and Ikulem was always watching Cobra's changes. His amazing discovery. Cobra's originally pale 23 complexion was turning rosy at an obvious speed. This, obviously, is a characteristic of health. Lord Cobra, finally recovered. God's will, God's will. Ikulem said in a low voice with excitement on his face. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. The burden in his heart was suddenly gone. Before that, Cobra once talked to him secretly. If Cobra died suddenly one day, he asked EPUB to fully assist Wei Wei and become an excellent leader of the kingdom. Since then, EPUB has been worried every day about Cobra's condition. Finally, after today, he doesn't have to worry about these issues. Because, Cobra will not have this sudden death situation again. And he, EPUB, can also breathe a sigh of relief. The heavy pressure in his heart gradually dissipated. Aside, Hancock, Tautu, and Tina looked at Li Ang's back, and their beautiful eyes were a little bright. Sure enough, his own husband is almighty. In this world, there is no problem that can stump your husband. The three of them thought so in their hearts, and their delicate faces were blushing. At this moment, Li Ang turned around and looked at the three Hancocks in front of him with a smile and love in his eyes. This guy. Hancock blushed and whispered. However, seeing Li Ang's tender eyes, almost softened her heart. Soon. 3 hours passed in a flash. Under the leadership of Wei Wei, a group of guards carried a small bowl the size of a palm, and walked from the kitchen of the palace to the position of inquiring step by step. Lord Li Ang, it's already cooked. Wei Wei looked at Li Ang and said respectfully. It's just that even Li Ang can't find it. There is a strange look in her beautiful big eyes, and her pretty face has a bit of blush, which is unbelievably beautiful. Originally pure as if it were an angel in white. Now Wei Wei has added a bit of charming charm. Wake up King Cobra. Li Ang looked at EPUB, and then at Cobra, who was resting on the sofa, and said bluntly. Yes, Mr. Li Ang. Ikaram patted Cobra's shoulder a little and said in a low voice, Lord Cobra, the medicine is here, wake up. Huh. Cobra opened his eyes and stretched his body. Chapter 638-Healing. Cobra opened his eyes and stretched his body. Only then did he realize that his body was healthier than before. The joy and excitement could not be concealed on his face. The first time, he was ready to thank Li Ang again. However, Li Ang noticed Cobra's move, waved his hand, pointed to the bowl of medicine in the guard's hand, and said, King Cobra, thank you, I'll talk about it later. Now, you'd better go first. Drink this bowl of medicine. The longer you are exposed to the air, the more the medicine will lose its effect. So, now is the best time to drink the medicine. Under Li Ang's words, Cobra forcibly restrained the words he wanted to thank in his heart, took a deep breath, and held the bowl of medicine in both hands. His expression became more and more excited. Drink this bowl of medicine, then he can be completely cured. Now, he has no doubts about the authenticity of Li Ang's words. Because Li Ang just performed acupuncture, which brought him such a huge change. Then, drink this bowl of medicine and you will be cured. This is not only what he thought in his heart, but also the fact that EPUB and Vivi recognized in their hearts. There is no need for Li Ang to deceive them, and there are already previous examples. Cobra is indeed recovering continuously. Since Li Ang has already said that after drinking this bowl of medicine, Cobra will recover, so it is definitely not deceiving others. Father, please drink quickly. Wei Wei's pretty face was full of anticipation, said. EPUB also looked at Cobra. In the eyes of the crowd, Cobra was holding a bowl of medicine in both hands, and his hands were trembling involuntarily. The smell of the medicine was very unique, but it was mainly bitter. What a bitter medicine, to him, it is nothing. So many illnesses have come all the way, and all problems are not problems in his eyes. As long as you drink this bowl of medicine, the distance to recovery will not be too far. Gollum. Cobra held the small bowl and drank all the medicine in the bowl in one gulp. His face became more and more rosy, with healthy blood, and the expression on his face became very unbearable. This bowl of medicine is not ordinary bitterness. After all, after boiling for 3 hours, this bowl of medicine, which condensed all the ingredients, is naturally not comparable to the taste of ordinary medicine. After spending a lot of energy, Cobra finally drank the medicine. "Father, how do you feel?" Wei Wei asked for the first time. She has a delicate face, with a bit of nervousness and anxiety. "My body is recovering at an obvious speed." Cobra looked at his hands, which were old and weak. Now, it has gradually regained the sense of strength it should have. All the ailments are constantly being cleared away. Although the corners of his mouth still had a strong bitter taste, his heart was very excited and excited. After so long, the pain was finally cleared up. This feeling cannot be described in words. King Cobra, if you take a little rest, you will find out. When you wake up, all your symptoms have disappeared without a trace. Liang interrupted the words of the two at this time and smiled. "Mr. Liang, thank you so much." Cobra took a deep breath and said solemnly. "Mr. Liang, thank you very much." Wei Wei's pretty face blushed slightly, she bowed, and said. Ecolem also said something to thank Liang. The main reason why Cobra was able to recover was, of course, because of Liang in front of him. If there is no Liang, then Cobra wants to recover, and he doesn't know that he will have to wait until the year of the monkey and the horse month. And, most terrifying, Cobra faced the possibility of sudden death during this period. Chapter 639-Shy Wei Wei. No need to thank you, King Cobra, you'd better go and rest for a while. Tonight, there is a dinner party. I promise, when the dinner party comes, you will be alive and well, standing in front of everyone. It's a day to remember. Isn't it? Liang said with a smile, looking at Cobra. Yes, this is a memorable day. Not only because of my recovery, but also because of Mr. Liang, you can come to our Alabasta. Cobra nodded solemnly and said with a smile. Immediately, Cobra looked at Wei Wei and said, Wei Wei, led Mr. Liang and the others to the vacant room in the palace. Remember to instruct the staff to clean up the room. Father, me. Wei Wei's pretty face blushed, and her beautiful eyes flashed an unnatural look. What's wrong? Cobra asked with a bit of suspicion. No, nothing more. Wei Wei hurriedly shook her head, her pretty face flushed, and she looked at Liang and said, Mr. Liang, please come with me, and I will take you to your residence. I have worked hard for you just now. Yeah. Liang looked at Wei Wei's delicate face turning red, and was a little puzzled. Under the leadership of Wei Wei, Liang, Hancock and others also gradually left the hall. Before Liang left, Cobra also expressed his gratitude again. Mr. Liang, thank you very much. You're welcome. Liang paused for a moment and smiled. His figure quickly disappeared from Cobra's sight. After they gradually left, Cobra said to Ecolem beside him, Ecolem, go and do your work, I can go back and rest by myself. Lord Cobra, I'd better accompany you. I'm still a little worried. Ecolem hesitated for a moment, then whispered. All right. Cobra nodded and asked curiously, by the way, just now, Wei Wei, what's with that shy expression? Is it possible? Cough cough. Ecolem coughed and said vaguely, I don't know either. Come on, if you are like this, tell me clearly that you know the origin of this matter. Ecolem, I order you to tell me the reason for it. Cobra glared at Ecolem angrily and said. Not to mention, now that he has recovered his health, those eyes are a bit of a deterrent when used to stare at people. Lord Cobra, then I'll say it. I just happened to hear it, not on purpose. Ecolem took a deep breath and stated, at that time, Lord Cobra, you were seriously ill, and your health was getting worse and worse. Princess Vivi was naturally anxious. Seeing that, none of the doctors could relieve your condition. Quote. So, Princess Wei Wei's mood is constantly facing various pressures every day. This girl has suffered for her. Cobra sighed and said. He threw the crutches beside him in one hand. Crutch. It is no longer needed. Where can he still use crutches now? When I use crutches again, I'm afraid it will be 20 or 30 years later. Now he is in middle age, but he is not as good as old age. If he uses crutches, he will have to let many people think of himself. Then what? Cobra looked at Ecolem and continued to ask. And then? Ecolem gave a wry smile and said, Lord Cobra, you know that Princess Vivi usually doesn't believe in superstitious things. But because of your serious illness, by chance, she encountered a meteor shower. So, at that time, Princess Weiwei secretly made a wish. It can't be said to be a wish, but she also put forward a price that she can pay for her wish. It's a promise, so to speak. Finished talking. Cobra had already thought of something, and he asked, this wish, is it for me to recover? Chapter 639-Shy Weiwei. Cobra had already thought of something, and he asked, this wish, is it for me to recover? Yes. Ecolem nodded and said. So, what's the price? Cobra looked a little nervous. Although he doesn't believe in those so-called costs, if Weiwei is entangled with those weird things because of this, then he would rather he never recover. The price. Ecolem smiled even more bitterly. See. Cobra breathed a sigh of relief, and Ecolem's expression made him less nervous. At least, not so harmful things can be. Princess Vivi said it at the time. I pray to God to let you recover, Lord Cobra. Anyone who can heal you, Lord Cobra. Then, Princess Weiwei, she can agree with her, and it's not impossible. Ecolem said slowly, and after he finished speaking, he himself felt that this was absurd. However, Princess Weiwei at that time did say this. It can be considered that this promise was made in the face of the meteor shower. At this time, Cobra's throat was dry, her eyes widened, and she lost her voice. That is to say, Vivi, if she wants to fulfill her promise. Will she make a promise to Mr. Liang? For now, it seems, that's it. According to Princess Vivi's character, I don't think she will go back on her word. Because, Lord Cobra, you have indeed recovered. Princess Weiwei will never forgive herself if she violates it. That's why I can see that Princess Weiwei is facing Mr. Liang just now. She has been covering up her mood swings all the time. In fact, she didn't dare to face Liang's love for girls. Because she made this promise herself. So, facing Mr. Liang, she will naturally feel very shy. Down with these words. Cobra finally figured out why. However, this reason made him laugh and cry. At the same time, he was also very pleased. Weiwei, this girl, can do so much for his old father, he is naturally very moved. It's just, I didn't expect that this little girl, Weiwei, even made a promise. Moreover, such an old-fashioned thing was used as a price. How can this be fixed? Diaresis Lord Cobra, this is what happened. Ecolem looked at Cobra and said. Then I finally know. Why did Weiwei dare not look at Mr. Liang just now? It turned out that she was afraid of this matter. Cobra slowly exhaled and said. No, Lord Cobra, you were wrong. Ecolem shook his head and said. Wrong, where? Cobra asked, puzzled. Hearing this, Ecolem said, Lord Cobra, you shouldn't have said the word fear just now, but you should use the word shy to describe it. Because from beginning to end, Zhao Liao Zhao, Princess Weiwei, there is no fear at all, some are just shy. Quote. Huh. Cobra's eyes shone brightly and said, that means, Vivi does not dislike Mr. Liang. On the contrary, in her heart, she still has a lot of affection for Mr. Liang. It can also be understood that way. Ecolem nodded. If Mr. Liang is my son-in-law, it seems to be a good choice. The corners of Cobra's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a smile. Liang, he is quite satisfied. If the other party can become Weiwei's object, it is also the most suitable candidate. In addition, Weiwei also has a good impression of Liang, and there are promises. With the help of him and Ecolem, this marriage history seems to be within reach. Thinking of this, Cobra smiled brighter and said to himself, Mr. Liang is a very good man. If Weiwei can be with him, I will definitely not object. I even have to match them. Where are the two of them? Chapter 640 _ The Price of Wishing. Lord Cobra is right. EPUB also showed a smile and nodded in agreement. If Princess Weiwei can like Mr. Liang, that would be the best thing. Cough cough. Cobra coughed dryly and said, then we'll prepare, just in case the little girl, Weiwei, won't dare to go out. So, we have to help her. Create opportunities for her. If you miss it, you will regret for a lifetime. Quote. A talent like Mr. Liang is hard to find in this world. Finished talking. Cobra seemed to have thought of something, and as a father, he blushed. Unexpectedly, in the end, I still have to do it myself. But then again, creating this kind of environment for Weiwei is the first time he has done this kind of thing. In the past, he was afraid that Weiwei would be abducted by other men, and he was frightened every day. But today, he actually wanted to create an environment for Weiwei himself and send her daughter away, which made him very emotional and indescribable. Lord Cobra, let's take a rest now. Princess Weiwei must be in a hurry. What's more, tonight's dinner is the best chance. EPUB stood beside Cobra and said. 797. You're right. After Cobra nodded, he gradually left. After treatment, his condition gradually disappeared. It's just that in terms of spirit, energy and spirit, it has not been able to return to the most normal situation. After a short rest period, you can fully recover. After suffering from illness, the body needs to be recuperated for a period of time to ensure that it will not be eroded by the virus in the future. These are all things that must be done well. If the pain recurs, it's a big problem. The other side. Weiwei led Liang and the others to the vacant room smoothly. Her delicate and pure face was slightly red, and Mei did not dare to look directly at Liang's eyes, so she dodged slightly. Mr. Liang, how many houses do you need? Weiwei's pretty face moved and she asked in a low voice. He knew that Hancock and the others were all Liang's wives. Since that was the case, it was impossible for all of them to sleep separately. When this question was asked, she felt extremely shy in her heart. One house is enough, so you won't waste so many rooms. Liang said slowly with a smile. CDFG. A room. Weiwei's beautiful eyes were a little surprised, her face flushed, and she pushed open the door of the room and introduced, this house should be enough for the four of you. Thanks. Liang said with a smile. You're welcome, Mr. Liang. Then I won't disturb your rest. Weiwei lowered her head, blushing, and her voice was like a mosquito. By the way, I want to ask a question, do you mind? Liang looked at the ruddy and delicate Weiwei and asked with a smile. You say. Weiwei shook her sky blue hair gently, she was pure and beautiful, like an angel, like the neck of a white swan, her skin was like jade, smooth and flawless. Hancock, Taotu, and Tina glanced at Liang with a strange look, and they all walked into the room step by step. In front of the hallway. Only Liang and Weiwei were left. Weiwei felt the strange atmosphere, her delicate pretty face became more and more rosy, and her head almost came out with white smoke. What do you want to ask? Weiwei couldn't bear it, blushed and asked. Chapter 640 _ The Price of Wishing. Weiwei couldn't bear it, blushed and asked. I want to ask, why are you blushing from just now until now? Could it be that you are so shy when you are next to me? I don't feel right, so I want to ask, what is the reason? Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and asked. This. Weiwei's pink lips were slightly opened, her beautiful eyes contained a shyness, she raised her head, and looked at Liang in front of her with big innocent eyes. Feeling Liang's gaze meeting her, Weiwei's little heart was pounding, and her whole person seemed unnatural and twisted. It stands to reason that a princess cannot be so shy. However, in front of Liang, Weiwei was as shy as a little girl. Can't you tell? Then I won't ask. Liang waved his hand and said easily. I'll go first. Weiwei lowered her head, her sky blue hair slipped, covering her delicate ruddy face, making her feel a little less shy. The reason for being shy? Of course she is very clear about this. It's just that she couldn't say anything about this kind of thing, so she didn't say it. At this time, Liang watched Wei Wei's shadow gradually leave, withdrew his gaze, turned around, and greeted the unkind faces of Hancock and the others. "My lovely and charming wives, what's wrong? Are you jealous?" Liang laughed, walked to Hancock's side, and whispered. "Go away, we're not your wives." Hancock rolled his eyes and said depressedly. "That's right, go away." Tina's pink lips were slightly parted, her pink hair fluttered, and the entire delicate face had a strong eccentric look. I was wrong, I shouldn't ignore you. Please forgive me, my wives and adults, I don't dare anymore." Liang shouted exaggeratedly, put his arms around Hancock's slender waist, and threw himself down. He pressed his entire body on Hancock's body, feeling the soft touch, which made him close his eyes slightly, savor it carefully, and linger. "You bastard." Hancock's pretty face blushed, and she was so suppressed that she couldn't move, gritted her silver teeth, and said angrily. Immediately, there was a burst of laughter in the entire room. Not far away, Wei Wei, who had just left the corridor, returned to her room. In the room, the walls on both sides are covered with pink decorations, which looks very cute. In the center, a huge bed is very conspicuous, with curtains hanging down around it, with perforations and exquisite patterns, very elegant. Wei Wei walked to the window step by step, raised her head, looked at the sky with her big eyes, her pink lips slightly parted, and whispered to herself, "My wish has come true." Thinking of this, her face turned red all of a sudden. The wish is out of sight, then the price she once promised should also be carried out. She was really worried that Cobra would lie down again if it was violated. "What shall we do?" Wei Wei covered her face with her hands, lost in thought. "It seems that I also have a good impression of Mr. Liang. All in all, it's not annoying. Moreover, Mr. Liang is so good, there must be many girls who like it. I'm just a princess of a small kingdom, can Mr. Liang like me?"